What's up, y'all?
Hey, everybody. I was expecting something a little bit different, but that's okay. We are live and we are here today to discuss everything about the 1994 film Forrest Gump. This will be a deep dive. So get your popcorn and snacks because this will be a long one. Welcome to everybody in the chat joining us on YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. And with no further ado, let's talk about Forrest Gump, y'all.
I'm Heit,
And I'm Cheri.
and you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation via Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. Yeah, so a lot of you voted for this film, and when I look at the screen, I realize that it is such a classic from 1994, and I can't wait to actually be able to cover all of it. But the first thing that we have to talk about is that there will be some spoilers. We are just going to go deep. So if you haven't seen Forrest Gump and you don't want it spoiled, go ahead and hop off the call. I'll forgive you, and then you can come back at the point when you are ready. But if you haven't seen Forrest Gump and you want to hear the discussion, don't worry. We'll tell you all about the important things in the film so that you won't get lost and you'll be able to participate just like as if you did see the movie, okay? So the first thing that we like to talk about is the background. What's going on? What are the things that sort of contributed to the film and, what's happening with the movie? So the first thing that I would say is that Forrest Gump is this heartwarming and yet bittersweet tale of a simple and sincere man who, despite his limitations of having a low IQ, unintentionally influences major historical events while navigating love and loss and this unpredictable journey of life, all while he's chasing his one true love, Jenny. So we should talk about first thing is like the writer and the director. Forrest Gump was directed by Robert Zemeckis, and he was known for things like Back to the Future, which on this channel we actually do have Back to the Future. And I am checking here. I want to make sure that we're not having a technical issue.
Do you not hear anything?
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything right now. I'm just
Where?
seeing if live on the channel, but I'm gonna go because I'm monitoring the channel also. So if you guys just bear with us because this is
Let us know if y'all can hear something.
in the chat. Just chat and let us know because what we're doing is it says that we're live, so we must hopefully actually be live. Oh, okay, yeah. So we are live. So people.
Oh, you said the sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah, I couldn't hear. So, okay, great. Latoya, thank you so much and welcome. I appreciate it because when I stopped hearing the sound, I was like, oh, wait, is everybody hearing us? All right, so we were talking about the director and writer, Robert Zemeckis is the director. And so he was known for Back to the Future, which we did a breakdown of on this channel here. And he's also known for Castaway. And in case you guys don't know, Tom Hanks, who starred in Castaway and in Forrest Gump, is Height's favorite actor, actually.
Yeah.
So the film was also written by Eric Roth, and it adapted Winston Groom's 1986 novel. So it's based on a book. And Roth's screenplay made several key changes from the book. And so it focuses more on emotion and Forrest's personal journey than the book is. So let's talk about the cast. We mentioned Tom Hanks, who is the star. He is Forrest Gump in the movie. And how Tom Hanks wasn't the first choice for Forrest. I don't know if y'all knew this. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Tom Hanks was not the first choice. Actually, it was John Travolta and Bill Murray and Chevy Chase all turned down the role.
Oh, it wouldn't have worked with Chevy Chase.
I can't imagine it being anybody except him.
But he's like an actual comedy actor. I don't know if we consider Tom Hanks that because, the earlier stuff he kind of was, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know if you would have got a so-called comedian or comedic actor if it would have been the same.
Welcome to the chat, T. Martin. Hey, I see you all the time making comments and stuff. So I'm glad that you're actually here. She says that she's at work, so let her get the headphones. Yes, girl, get your headphones because we're gonna be talking about this movie.
Yeah, and Latoya says Bill Murray might have been good. I think maybe it's just the type of acting that Chevy Chase does. Because I think Bill Murray is kind of more a subtle type of comedy.
Did we ever see Chevy Chase in a drama?
Ooh.
Because when I think Chevy Chase, I think like National Lampoon's Vacation. I think he had a movie that was like a dramedy that was starring him and what's that? What's her? Goldie Hawn back in the. I can't remember the name of it, but it used to, when I was a kid, it used to always come on HBO. But anyway. So I digress, but they did not expect Tom Hanks to be the star of this film, and so Tom Hanks, he took that role though. After just 90 minutes of reading the script, he personally ensured Forrest's Southern accent was going to be consistent with the young actor who played his young self. So I think they did a really, really good job of making sure that young Forrest in the film felt like the grown Forrest that we see for most of the film. So the other thing about Forrest Gump, because it's 2025, we have amazing special effects in films right now. But you got to remember, this film was made in 1994. But for the time, it was groundbreaking. It was amazing effects, right?
Yeah, because some of the parts was they had to take archival footage and place Tom Hanks in there and have those characters interact, kind of like we think that now AI is so great and stuff. They actually did this same sort of thing that we're still trying to do that to make look real with AI right now.
Yeah, and it was making it look like he was standing next to Nixon and JFK and LBJ. And it also there's a part where Lieutenant Dan, played by Gary Sinise, he is legless in the film. And I remember back in the day watching the behind the scenes or whatever, how he had legs, but they were trying to make it look like he didn't. And the CGI removed his legs after, he had lost them in Vietnam. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was in the commentary or something, but I've seen and heard them talk about how they achieved these things. I don't know if they had a special back in the day, but it could have been on a DVD.
Yeah, it should have if it wasn't. Yeah. So the next thing is the iconic running scene. Forrest's famous cross-country run, it wasn't in Forrest Gump, the novel, right? But it became one of the film's most memorable scenes. And so the running montage where he's running so long that like his hair and beard grow out and everything, it was shot across multiple states with Tom Hanks's brother, Jim Hanks, serving as the running double in certain scenes.
Wait, what?
Who even knew Tom Hanks had a brother?
Who even knew that it was based on a novel?
I didn't know it until I started researching for this. I really didn't. And so that brings us to the fact that one of the main reasons that this film is so iconic, not just because it's amazing, but it was acknowledged as being amazing. Hey, Marlon Bellamy. Marlon is at work listening to us too. Listen, our work crew is listening. We are so happy to have you. You don't have to worry about the replay because you're here and you can chime in. Just don't laugh too loud so then people don't know that you are up at their job listening to us and cackling and passing the time while you're over there with them. So, but anyway, so the box office awards, Forrest Gump, it was a massive success and it earned over $678 million worldwide. It won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actor for Tom Hanks, Best Director for Zemeckis, and its cultural impact has really endured with famous quotes like "Life is like a box of chocolate" or "Stupid is the stupid does," and they're iconic still to this day. So.
And it's out there that people are getting the quotes wrong, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Especially "Life is like a box of chocolates."
It's so crazy because, like, I think sometimes what happens is you just remember them how you remember them. But then when you misremember stuff, even if you collectively misremember stuff, then that's when people start calling it a Mandela effect.
And then I think that there's these cultural moments where it gets spread. Like if there's a comedy, a comedian who's talking about Rodney King and what he said, that quote changed because then that becomes the memory that people have. But his mom, should we talk about this now or later?
Yeah, we could talk about it in more detail, but just give a little hint of what it is.
A hint?
Well, his mom said
the box of chocolate.
Life is like a box of chocolates.
Yeah, he said, my mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But then later on, when he's talking to her, she said, life's a box of chocolates. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to talk about how, because the whole film is really a flashback of Forrest remembering these events in his life and telling them to people as he's sitting on this bench. So, on the bench waiting for a bus, or these people are waiting for buses and stuff like that. So, I also want to say hello to Joshua White, who says, hey, y'all, I'm a longtime viewer, first time commenting, love all of your channels. Thank you so much for joining us for this afternoon live. We appreciate you so much, more than you know. Ant is also here in the chat saying that Forrest Gump is his favorite movie. So get ready. And then since it's your favorite movie, we know you know all the facts and other stuff in comments. Exactly. So weigh in.
If you hear me ruffling around over here, I'm looking for a Y splitter because something's going on with my headphone input and I don't have the headphone mixer connected.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's okay. I'll take over as much as possible, and then we'll figure it out as we go on. I mean, but this is the difference, right? On the fly, on live, you're just sort of handling technical issues as they arise. So with Forrest Gump, we have this cast. We already talked about Tom Hanks playing Forrest Gump. Then young Forrest Gump was played by Michael Connor Humphreys, and that's who Tom Hanks wanted to make sure that he had his accent down, so that he sounded the same as the young actor. Then we have Jenny, who is Robin Wright, used to be Robin Wright Penn because she used to be married to Sean Penn, but she's an amazing actress in her own right. And then young Jenny is played by Hannah Hall. Mrs. Gump, Forrest Gump's mother, is played by none other than Sally Field, who is an amazing actress, Oscar-winning actress in her own right. And she had been around for years and years, even at the point that this came out. Sally Field, I think she starred in like The Flying Nun, which is a TV show before my time. But I knew her from that, and then a bunch of other movies that came out. And she was, really around a lot during the 80s. She was like that solid Oscar contending woman in the 80s. And I think her Oscar was for Places in the Heart, which is this story of a recently widowed woman who is trying to work this farm and, save her farm and take care of her family on her own. So Sally Field plays Forrest Gump's mother. Then we have Lieutenant Dan, who was played by Gary Sinise, and Bubba, whose real name is Benjamin Buford Blue, is played by Michael T. Williams. And in the past, and I just want to give a public apology, in the past, because of the way his name is spelled, it's spelled Mykelti, we weren't sure if it was McKelty or Michael T. Well, I looked up some interviews, and then Heit had also heard it said before, and it seems that his name is correctly pronounced Michael T. So sorry if we said it wrong in the past. But anyway, Michael T. Williamson is Bubba. And then Forrest Gump Jr. is played by none other than Haley Joel Osment. Yes, Haley Joel, I See Dead People Osment, because he was in The Sixth Sense. He was the little boy who starred in that. And he was really, really young in this movie. So the next thing we should just go over is the movie summary. Oh, and Ant mentions that Michael T. Williamson was also in ATL, which we did just cover a live and have videos that are out over on Axiom Amnesia, the main Axiom Amnesia channel. So that's linked in the description. So if you're not subscribed over there, although I think most of you are, if you're not, you can go over there and you can watch the videos that we have over there on ATL. So the summary of the movie, well, let's talk about Act 1. And Act 1 of all these films really just kind of sets up the movie, tells us who the players are, what's going on, gives us a lay of the land. And so Forrest's unlikely journey begins in Act 1. And so Forrest Gump, who's played by Tom Hanks, as we mentioned, He was born with a low IQ. In fact, his IQ, I think, was 75, which is, slightly below average, right? And so he's got this low IQ and this issue, but and he's growing up with leg braces on in Greenbow, Alabama, with his loving mother, played by Sally Field. And his mother teaches him that he is just as capable as anyone else. So at school, he meets Jenny, who is played by Robin Wright, as we mentioned, and she's a troubled girl who becomes his best friend in lifelong love. And despite being bullied, Forrest discovers that he can run exceptionally fast, which earns him a college football scholarship at the University of Alabama. But during this time, in his time there, he inadvertently witnesses the desegregation of the school. And after graduation, he enlists in the Army, where he befriends Bubba, who is Michael T. Williams, and who Bubba dreams of starting this shrimp business. They are deployed to Vietnam, where unfortunately Bubba is killed in battle. And so Forrest historically saved several soldiers, including his bitter and cynical lieutenant, Lieutenant Dan, who's played by Gary Sinise. And Lieutenant Dan ultimately loses his legs. Forrest is awarded the Medal of Honor, and he meets President Lyndon Baines Johnson, right? So that's kind of where we are at the end of Act 1. And so during this time, and you'll see this throughout the film, that Jenny just pops in and out of Forrest's life just at will. She's always leaving him, though. She comes, she doesn't stay long, and then she bounces. So then when we get to Act 2 of the film, we could call this love, loss, and unexpected success. So returning home after the war, Forrest briefly reunites with Jenny, who's now involved with this counterculture sort of lifestyle with substances and activism sort of mixed together. And so though she cares for Forrest, Jenny continues down this self-destructive path, believing that she's unworthy of his love. Meanwhile, Forrest becomes a successful ping pong player because he starts learning to play ping pong while he's recovering from his injuries in Vietnam. And he travels to China, and then later he invests in Apple stock, which makes him a very wealthy man. So he fulfills his promise to Bubba by starting a shrimp business with Lieutenant Dan. And meanwhile, Forrest remains in love with his childhood friend, Jenny, who is struggling with her problems with a lifestyle of bad things happening to her, as well as substances and her inability to kind of break away from that. So she briefly visits him, but then she leaves him again. Like we said, she comes and she goes. So heartbreaking, Forrest embarks on a spontaneous cross-country run that lasts over 3 years, and it gains national attention. And that's what we were talking about earlier when we talked about the scene with him running, and his brother actually is one of the runners that stands body stand-in for him or whatever, a body double. And so that's where we end up at the end of Act 2 of the film. Forrest is heartbroken and running and whatnot. And so then in Act 3, we get the climax and the emotional resolution of Forrest Gump. So after years of separation, Jenny returns to Forrest, revealing that she is sick. And I must also mention that in the process of all of this, Forrest's mother has passed away, and that is heartbreaking to him too. But it seems that he's even more heartbreaking by Jenny coming and going, because he really loves Jenny. So after Jenny returns to Forrest, she reveals that she is sick with some virus and that they have this son, Forrest Jr. So Forrest is initially shocked, but he's overjoyed to learn that he has this child. And so the three of them are going to form a family. He tells Jenny he's going to take care of her, and they get married. But Jenny is very ill. And despite Forrest's efforts to provide a happy life for him, she soon succumbs to this unspecified illness, which is likely related to her past struggles with the substances and the lifestyle and all that she had going on. So Forrest is devastated, obviously, by her, being gone, but he continues to honor her memory by raising their son. And so the film concludes with Forrest sending Forrest Jr., his son, off to school, just like at the beginning of the film, we saw him getting on the school bus and everything, and his mother sending him off to school. So reflecting the parallels between their two lives is really what's happening here. And so as Forrest watches the school bus drive away, this white feather floats in the air. And we had seen that white feather at the very beginning of the film because it finds him on this bench before he starts telling this whole story. So this feather kind of symbolizes the randomness and unpredictability of life. And it brings the film to this poignant and emotional close. And of course, the music, the score is beautiful. And, it has you maybe even becoming a little bit teary-eyed or whatever. But Forrest has lived through a series of extraordinary events, and he finds peace in the love that he shared with Jenny and the legacy that they now have together with their son, even though Jenny is not with him. And so that basically wraps up what happens in Forrest Gump as a summary. So I know that was like a long way to say what happens in the film, but I just want to be able to remind y'all, so when we have these deeper discussions, then you'll be able to weigh in and remember exactly what happened. And we'll get even deeper as we go. But first, I want to encourage everybody, if you're not already, to join our free Patreon. We have just introduced a new free tier of our Axiom Amnesia Patreon that will allow you to access some, not all, of our members-only exclusive content. And so, for instance, this month, we have a 3.5-hour Luther Vandross documentary watch party that allows you to see the full film along with our commentary. And of course, our premium YouTube channel members and premium Patreon members have access to all of the exclusive content, live stream, replays, early releases, and other perks of membership of Axiom Amnesia offers. But we wanted to give everybody a chance to just see what we're offering to our members. Try it before you buy it, if you will. So your free tier Axiom Amnesia Patreon account, even if you're a YouTube channel member, we are encouraging you to just join the free tier because you can message us directly over there. We can have other conversations. You can participate in polls. And just to be clear again, the premium members, whether you're on YouTube or Patreon, you're not missing out on anything. Because we will still be offering you things that are not on the free tier. But the link is in the description to join our free Patreon. All you have to do is you just go to patreon.com/axiomamnesia. You click the join for free button, and then you follow the instructions to log in with your existing social media account. Or you can go ahead and set up an account if you want to. And then you'll be able to access everything that's in the feed, much like what you would see on YouTube, except you have a little bit, you have more options, I think, there. And plus, just full disclosure, we need to have a way to be able to talk to you outside of this particular platform because you just never know what's going to happen. I mean, we see what, went on over on TikTok. At some point, stuff can shut down, things can change, and we want to still be able to have a line to you and you have a line to us. So that is the reason. And so,
as an aside, so I hooked up a Y adapter and to Cheri's side, and it's very loud.
Oh. It's weird because when I listen as I'm listening, monitoring in my ear, we both sound the same, at least on YouTube, like on the live stream now, which is good. It's not like I sound really, really loud or anything. So Raid Newberry in the chat says Ice Cube turned down the role of Bubba to be an anaconda.
Good.
Man, good because Michael T. Williams is better to me, but that was like, man, you should have been in an Oscar-winning movie. Bruh. Anaconda was like a throwaway.
I know.
People barely remember Anaconda.
That can't be real because if you read the two, I don't know. Just on the surface, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Forrest Gump.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it was the money because I don't think they had a lot of money. And, it said that your boy paid a lot out of pocket to get this film made, Tom Hanks. And, foregoing some of his salary.
He paid a lot out of pocket.
Yeah. He's forego his salary.
Oh, up front.
Not up front, but I guess he agreed. And then as things went along, he was just like, well, I'm not taking this. I ain't taking this to fund it. And then some stuff he actually paid for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's crazy. If it's true.
I know, right? If it's true. Okay, so now that we have gotten through like all of the background stuff, we know the cast, we have laid the land and everything, we've given you guys a summary of the film. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, some of the main discussions. And we probably should start with just some of the general Forrest Gump stuff, right? Um, and actually mentions in the chat before we start that Forrest Gump beat out Shawshank Redemption for an Oscar in 1994. You know, I was looking up all these movies that are in 1994 that we're talking about covering, whether they are movies that are like from, you know, the golden age of black cinema or whether they are the mainstream movies. And it's crazy how many good movies came out in 94. And Shawshank is one we are definitely going to be covering soon as well.
Speed.
Speed. I mean, but Speed was good. Speed was good.
It was good for what it was at the time.
Yeah. Like we can't talk bad about Speed. So back to the Forrest Gump.
Hold on. I have to go look. So 1994.
Mm-hmm.
Forrest Gump. This is in order according to Wikipedia. So, you know, take that how it is from gross domestic sales, whatever. Forrest Gump, The Lion King, True Lies, The Santa Claus. I never watched The Santa Claus.
True Lies was good.
Yeah. The Flintstones, Dumb and Dumber, Clear and Present Danger, Speed, The Mask, and Pulp Fiction. That's just the 10. House Party 3, The Arab there. Okay, that's a
lot of movies.
That's a whole discussion itself. Maybe we could do a live on that.
We should talk about why 1994 churned out such good movies. So with Forrest Gump, our general discussion questions, and we just have to start off with just calling it like we see it. Did Forrest Gump lie about his story? Did he lie? Because is it possible that Forrest's retelling of his life story is just unreliable or even exaggerated based on how he presents his experiences to the people around him? Especially over there on, you know, the bench, because throughout the film, people are coming up to this bench and, you know, he tells them his part of the story about this. Yeah. Then they leave and somebody else comes and so on.
So in 2024, rather than 1994 or 2025, you can Google these things because they were big events that you could find and say, oh, that's him. Sitting on a bench in 1994, you can't do that.
Right.
You just have to go by what they say. And certain things you couldn't look up at all, right? You couldn't, you know, even to this day, you can't find a record of certain things that somebody would tell you.
And interestingly, because in this film, you know, JFK and Forrest Gump hooks up with JFK, and
because he's all American,
yeah. Recently, they have released some of the and he mentioned MLK too, right? In Forrest Gump, I'm trying to remember. No. Maybe he didn't mention him. I was wondering if he mentioned. Anyway, the bottom line is that they have released or are declassifying even more information about JFK and MLK and whatnot. So, Latoya Hickman says to answer that question about whether Forrest lied about his life story, she says, I don't think so. He's telling it like he remembers. And we're going to hold that thought because we're going to get to that. But you have to question the authenticity of Forrest's narrative, considering these extraordinary events that he does describe, such as playing table tennis for the U.S., meeting these presidents, not just one, but like multiple presidents, running across the country and becoming famous for that. Yeah. And the events, they just seem almost too unbelievable for somebody with his intellectual limitations.
He was an All-American. He came up with the smiley face, basically. Mm-hmm. The shit happens. He was the security guard for Watergate. You know, he taught Elvis.
Yeah, I know.
He was at the steps of the University of Alabama, right, with Governor Wallace. Yeah, it's so many things.
It's crazy. So the question really is, could Forrest be embellishing these moments in a way that reflects his simplistic worldview, or if the film uses his narration as a way to highlight his innocence and optimistic perception of the world? You know, we talk a lot about this idea of what what happens with the unreliable narrator, right? Especially with probably our most famous fan theory that we came up with about Menace to Society, and the question, well, not the question, we assert that basically O-Dog didn't exist, and that, Kane, it's all about Kane's perception in the film. And so even though the film depicts certain things, that it's not accurate because Kane is this unreliable narrator. If you've never heard of that fan theory or seen the video on it, you can check our Axiom Amnesia channel and just look up the Menace to Society fan theories, and you will find it there. So, back to the idea of Forrest Gump and could he be embellishing? We also have to ask the question about what the role of memory and storytelling is in shaping our understanding of events.
Yeah, there's this one thing that Cheri always tells me that I told her, but I actually told her, I was telling her about what somebody else said, but to this day she just
and
swears
I keep bringing
that
it up, but I
said it.
believe like it with it, and it's not just I believe it. He corrects me, but the correction is not what I remember, right? So I keep going back. It's like that a broken feedback loop or something. I keep going back to my memory of it, which is the inaccurate thing, right? And he keeps coming back and he's like, I keep telling you. And when he reminds me that he never said it, I remember the conversation.
Bruh,
then.
I actually point to the source. I'm like, it was in this song. Listen to this song. I was talking about this song.
Yes. But it just, I can't seem to, but like because your memory is short term, long term, you got all kind of things that you have in that cache, so to speak, or I would say cache, right? Your memory cache with that,
right?
You just, and so some of those things get kicked out immediately, or not important enough to remember. And so apparently the way it gets cataloged in my mind is every time he tells me I'm wrong, I don't catalog that as something I should remember in the long term. And I just go back to that same wrong memory.
Right. So it could, and also, so you have somebody with a certain cognitive ability and maybe even other mental issues too.
Right. Talking about Forrest Gump too. Yeah.
Yeah. That may change how he perceives everything and how he catalogs everything that he's experienced in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because one of the things he does say, we hear it over and over. Mama always says, mama said, my mama said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he has this common touch point, right? About his mama. And then, it have all these other events that could have been happening on TV, because that's another thing he always mentions, right? A man was on the TV and he said this and this happened. And then he meets somebody like the guy with the, he gave some advice to or something. He say, maybe it was the shits happens, right? Where somehow word got back to him that this person done this thing, right? And, so just tying these things together, sometimes it could possibly be a thing that, your memories are a little messed up.
And what about the idea that Forrest's constant storytelling to strangers at the bus stop could kind of be this metaphor for the way people construct their own histories? Like, ultimately, it probably makes sense to challenge the notion that Forrest's life story is as straightforward as it seems, offering a deeper exploration into how personal experiences, perceptions, and memory may color the actual truth, right? And we even talk about this, like with our discussion of Eve's Bayou. How is memory? That is really the whole issue surrounding the events of Eve's Bayou. What really happened? All of that.
Yeah, and how you deal with the world. It's how you're going to ingest things, and all of those sorts of things. And he's a storyteller who is maybe just for the sake of the audience, right? Us. To be able to just go through a journey through time and what happened in those days before this film was made.
And to interact with people, right? Because there's a point in the film where he talks about how that why he liked Jenny was because she would ask him questions and talk to him. And how the only other person in his life, at least up to that point, who did was his mother, right? So he had Jenny and his mother, and then later on he has Bubba. But and then Lieutenant Dan, but he didn't have a whole lot of people who were just interacting with him like that. And so, at the point where all of this is going on and these dialogues are happening, he really didn't have Jenny because she wasn't with him at that moment. He's on his way to see her. But this is probably his way of interacting and making friends, and he's learned this along the way. So I do have
And those are when you have some issues like that, they give you these tricks so that you're able to cope, right? So let's say, hey, these are these memory tricks you can do so that you can remember things. You place people in stories and you craft stories. So if you have problems with your memory, or not even just if you have problems, to enhance your memory, you craft stories around it. And if that becomes what your memory is,
then you start remembering the stories. Remember the fake
you remember
stuff.
the story.
They say that like about people who lie a lot or something, or like on one hand they say, oh, people forget their lies, but on the other hand, the repetition causes it to become true for the person. You know what I mean? So so here's another question though, just a general thing about the movie. How do the film's historical references comment on America's culture and identity? Like, because we saw a whole bunch of stuff in here, and the way that it is positioned in the film is a criticism to me and critique of the culture and the country at that time, because you're looking at things like the Vietnam War, integration, all how people who are other abled are treated, right? Whether that's mentally,
war,
right? How war vets are treated, whether that's like Lieutenant Dan, who becomes physically other abled because he loses his legs, and how he's treated, and the depression and everything that he experiences after that. Like, I think it's a stone cold commentary on it, right?
Oh yeah, so they didn't sidestep any of those race issues, Well, maybe they did a little, but the point is, when you get these long epics, right, that telling a story over so many decades, and they usually telling it from a white person's perspective, they just glance over that, and you're like, but wait a minute, how did this not happen, right? But we know that Zemeckis did this in Back to the Future as well, right? So that, hey, we're not leaving these pieces out. We're going to talk about these issues that these certain people were facing. A lot of times it don't. You just be wondering why there aren't any of us, or why they're interacting in a way as if, this whole struggle during the 50s and 60s didn't exist, or even times before.
Right. And so we actually, have examples here where Forrest, is influencing key historical events. Now, obviously, we know this is a fictional character. This isn't actually real. But there are people, not always the same person like in this movie, who do influence key historical events, especially stuff like in this film, the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement and stuff. And so
and like we did with BLM, but
yeah,
we'll talk about that some other time.
But how does his story reflect these American ideals, struggles, and contradictions? And what does it say about the individual's role in shaping history? Because I think that we have to, and this sounds so trite when you say it, but we have to be the change that we want to see. But like, we have to put in action, we should be actively living by our creed. It's not enough to just say, I believe people are equal. I believe women are equal to men. I believe that your sexual orientation doesn't matter. It's not enough to just say that. Like, we should be living like that. Our actions should say that as well. And there should be a matchup between the words that come out of our mouths and our actions, right? And so this story reflects the American ideals of like, oh, you can be an individual and we accept you, and, all of these types of, quote, freedoms. But yet the culture is not necessarily as free as it is portrayed, right? The culture doesn't allow you to be as free as if people weren't as judgmental about different things and circumstances, some of which you can help and some of which you cannot.
Yeah, so after being coming back from Vietnam, he was a vet, and he ended up at an anti-war rally, right? And it was clever how they basically just cut off the mic on him, so we don't even get to hear what Forrest said about it. And by the time they get the mics back on, it's over, right? So he still played all of these roles, but it's presented as he's very naive and unwitting about it, right? He's unaware that he's making all of these strides and stuff as well, right? So it doesn't even have to be intentional. But what is he doing by not being a bad person is making the world a better place.
Exactly. And so that really does answer, like, what does it say about the individual's role in shaping history? Each of us have our little part of history where at a minimum, we affect the people who we know directly, right? If they have bad experiences with us, if they, and we like are different in some way, or, maybe we're not the only woman they know, but what if, I'm the only Black person, or the only whatever. And I'm certainly not suggesting respectability politics, because I absolutely do not believe in that. But what I'm saying is, just as individuals, if other people have bad experiences with us, then that shapes how they view any group you're a part of. If I go someplace else, like,
as long as you're not the dominant group.
Right. Right. So if I go someplace else, like, when I lived in Mexico, the perception of how I behaved as an American is also transferred to those people who might experience me at the grocery store,
right,
at wherever I am. And they are likely to say, oh, Americans are like blah, 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 even though I am an individual. And that's how individuals do help to shape history, right? That's how people remember history. Do people remember every generalization? No, they remember, like the whole saying is, how people make them feel.
Yeah.
And that's individual. So, the next question that I would have is, what is the film's message about the unpredictability of life? We see that feather come in and out, and it's supposed to be like, this metaphor for like, the randomness of life. But what does the film say about that to you?
Unpredictability of life?
Yeah.
Well, so like I was saying, like everything he did was basically great, right? So I think it's some sort of hyperbole that, look, everything he does is great and it makes this big impact, even though he isn't unaware. He's just moving through life and life is affecting him, right? But it's appearing as though he is making these decisions and these actions, right? So when with me as an individual, then it's that same thing. Even though I don't know that I'm making an impact, I am making an impact. And even if I'm unaware, right? So I don't know what's going to happen next and what I'm going to do next and how I'm going to react to whatever happens, right? But I'm still going to be making an impact no matter how small it is, right? And I just think they showed it a big way here with Forrest Gump, that
all the unexpected things happening in his life. And,
everything's unexpected, and he's making a huge impact in almost every aspect of everybody's life, right? But that is the same with you, right? Butterfly effect in that sort of a way.
Yeah, and just this idea that we might not be able to control the direction of everything or every aspect of our lives, but we can still find meaning in the journey. That again sounds so trite to say, find meaning in the journey, but truly, like, so much of life is just being on a ride that you're not in the driver's seat, on a ride that you didn't decide to get on. When you're born into life, you're born on that bus route wherever your parents, you're with them, right? Or with the people who are caring for you. You didn't choose to get on that bus at that station, at that stop, in that city, in that wherever you are. It just is. Some people would say it's not random, but for you and the way you experience it personally at the beginning of your life is very random.
Yeah, and I thought these are random encounters that Forrest had with the other people who were at the the bus stop.
Yeah,
as well as with every other thing that he had a great impact in.
Ant says in the comments that Forrest was even hanging with the Black Panthers. Yeah, and that was actually kind of funny because it wasn't like he was just intentionally trying to. He wasn't like, let me go find these militants. You know?
And he wasn't trying to be like a super a feminist, I guess you could say, right? Because that's what he was doing. He was defending a woman in that scene, and then it's just like he was just doing what was right at the time, and it's commentary on those movements like that at the time and how they were probably misogynist and all those other words like that.
And speaking of that word, in what ways does Forrest Gump challenge the traditional ideals of masculinity and heroism, right? Because he's portrayed as a hero in like this non-traditional sense, right? He's not like big muscle bound and whatever, but he's saving the day in a lot of situations. But he doesn't have the typical masculine traits like aggression or self-interest that we see in these like overtly masculine characters. So how does the film subvert the idea of what makes somebody a hero? And what is this saying about our culture of understanding of masculinity and personal strength? Like, what do you think about Forrest from that?
Well, that's just kind of what I just said, but like also with even with standing at the door, Governor Wallace at University of Alabama, right? He didn't know. He just unwittingly go and pick up her book and stuff. So yeah,
so much of it seemed unintentional.
Yeah, Vivian Jones' book. Yeah, it's all unintentional.
Unintentional,
really,
but intentional to be who he is, right? At this basic level. My intentions are to be kind and nice and good to other people.
Jenny and
to save Jenny, and save Jenny because I love Jenny, right? These are his basic intentions, his foundational intentions. And everything else he does in the film is informed by these intentions, but those intentions are deliberate, right? He deliberately tries to be a good person. He just is, right? But these are deliberate things, and that's what leads him to just be sort of this one-track mind to whatever is the right thing in each situation. Although it comes off as being unintentional and very random. So yeah, so those are like just some of the kind of general things about the movie that I, just would like, was glad that we took the time to ponder. So let us talk about the first of a few relationships that Forrest Gump has in this movie. And the first one that we're introduced is Forrest's relationship with his mother. Is Forrest's relationship with his mother the film's biggest lie?
A lie? From Forrest, you mean? Or from the filmmaker?
Well, in general, and much like the way where we were talking about perception and whatever. But let me explain a little bit further. So could Forrest's relationship with his mother be exaggerated or even distorted within the narrative of the movie? Because while their bond is portrayed as deeply loving and essential to Forrest's character, the question arises whether the idealized version of their relationship is, in fact, a form of storytelling embellishment.
He will have to go non-contact in 2025 because, like we say, as black folks, right, if you got something wrong with you, what we gonna say? Ain't nothing wrong with you, or they ain't gonna make no accommodations or nothing for you. You just out there in the world all by yourself. And that's kind of how his mama was, right? Ain't nothing wrong with you. You could do anything anybody else could do.
And that's why he says that when he gets on the bus with Jenny, and Jenny finally, and everybody's like, seats taken. And then Jenny finally like, oh, okay, you can sit here when they're kids or whatever. And then Jenny's like, well, what's wrong with your legs? He's like, absolutely nothing. He is not admitting that he has anything wrong with his legs, anything wrong with him, or whatever. And by the way, Latoya Hickman in the chat says, I think that I'm thinking you mean the movie is saying that by you just being yourself, it makes you a hero. That could be. That could be. Ty Miller says, what was that country accent, Cheri?
What did she say?
I was mimicking the way the boy says seats taken, and he says it, seats taken.
She's from Alabama, y'all.
Listen, my family is from Alabama.
Let me tell y'all a quick story about Alabama. So when I went off to school, I had this idea, we watch the movies and they do the accent and stuff. And then I met this girl from Alabama and she sounded like that. And I was like, wow, I thought it was really exaggerated, but she really talks like that.
Yeah. I mean, that just is it. And it sounds a little familiar, right?
Yeah.
It's just like,
and then it's different when you're black too. Cause you're like, wait, hold on. You sound like everybody I done seen on TV who's talking like that.
Because you do have kind of like the black accent of, from a certain place, the black scent from a certain place. And then you have the more general, could be anybody accent from that place. But yeah. So considering that, and back to Forrest and his mother and that relationship, considering that Forrest often tells his story to strangers and that his perception of events is simplified or maybe even innocent, because that Forrest has this IQ of 75 and he's portrayed as being simple, right? Is it possible that the portrayal of his mother's influence and her care is not as perfect as it seems? Like when she slept with the principal to get him in school? Like,
hey,
did she
really
do that?
What did he say? He said your mother really cares about your education, boy.
He said your mother cares about your education, boy. He came out.
Maybe, so from his eyes, his mama's an angel, but in the world, but she did what she had to do, right? In the world, she's just, maybe a normal person or maybe of ill repute a little bit.
Well, maybe it gives the option for Forrest to still see his mother one way and the like audience to see her like she did what she had to do.
He saw his mother like children see their mother, and then when you grow up, then you realize, oh man, wait wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
All these different choices and, from an adult's perspective, but he never gets beyond that, right? So he still doesn't know what was going on. Just like when he was talking about Jenny, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Maybe. And what her daddy was doing. It's very, from a naive perspective.
Okay, so we're going to get to the naivete later. But my question is, so do y'all think, go to the comments, do you think that Forrest understood that his mother actually, got with the principal to get him in school? Do you think as an adult he understood? I mean, of course, as a kid, he probably didn't. But as an adult telling this story, do you think that's the case? And then you can also weigh in on, we know what was going on with Jenny's daddy and her. And Forrest says, oh, he always liked to kiss and hug on them, that kind of thing as he's retelling the story. Do you think Forrest really ever made the connection of what really and truly was going on? Because not to get ahead of the discussion, but that would inform how he dealt with and understood Jenny, if he understood what she had really been facing, and why she wanted to be turned into a bird and, fly away and never go back home, and why it was so wonderful for her when she got to move in with her grandmother. But back to Forrest's mother. So maybe this film is using Forrest's deep affection for his mother to kind of shape this emotional narrative, like one that frames his life as this journey of overcoming adversity and making his mother proud. And perhaps Forrest's unconditional devotion might be sort of romanticized, right? Questioning whether he understands their relationship is as truthful or reliable, or as we're led to believe, right? So does Forrest even realize this, or is it like you mentioned, she's just a saint, she's an angel in his head, and that's what she is? So this whole perspective just challenges the notion that Forrest's idealized view of his mother reflects the complexity of their actual relationship, and maybe suggests that there might be some hidden layers of discomfort or dependency or overprotection that are somewhat glossed over in the film's more sentimental portrayal of, that relationship with his mother. Because I think she had a decision to make, right? Forrest's mother had to make the decision of, we're in a world, they didn't have nearly the support for people who
or understanding.
Yeah, or understanding. And so it's like her decision is, do I teach my child? And she says this to the principal, like, I don't want him getting in the track where, I forgot what she said, but basically doing some menial job. I want him to be in school with the regular kids that are,
like
and he's
Woody was talking about in the YSL trial.
So she had to make that decision. And I think her decision was very much kind of the way you said, like in the Black families, how, it back in the day, it was like, ain't nothing wrong with you. You better, and that was across the board. And, we jokingly laugh. And I saw on a meme where it was talking about Black parents, and it was like, oh, if you say, you mama, I'm depressed, and your mama would be like, you better go in there and depress them damn dishes. We laugh at that, but some of it perhaps might be a lack of understanding, and the other parts of it, which we talk about from time to time, are just this idea of survival as the first thing. Like, you don't even have the luxury of worrying about your quote unquote mental health, because you got to survive in the body first before we can even get to that. And, that's a whole nother digression that we won't make at this point. But, back to Forrest's mother, these are, I think, fair questions that any parent, when you realize your child is other-abled and has needs beyond what's in the range of typical, how you're going to meet those needs. Are you going to do everything for them? Because reality is that, as a parent, you probably 20, 30, 40 years older than your child, and they're going to outlive you. So if you do everything for them, who's going to take care of them? And one thing about Forrest, you saw at the end, he was taking care of his son. He was able to take care of himself. So, but let's just talk more about how Forrest's mother was actually portrayed in the film. So this relationship, like we said, was one of deep love. She was always there to support and guide him. When Jenny kept coming and going, he would go cry on his mama's shoulder and stuff. So throughout the film, his mother was like a constant source of comfort and wisdom. And, she was just encouraging him to believe in himself despite his intellectual challenges. Because remember, the film says specifically that he had an IQ of 75. And so she provides him with the foundation to navigate the world and teaches him that life is like a box of chocolates. And then you pointed out, let's talk about this in more detail.
Unpredictability.
About, the unpredictability and the misremembering of the statement. Did she say life is like a box of chocolates, or that's what he said, she said, and she said life is a box of chocolates?
That's what we say. We say life is like a box of chocolates, but he says mama said life was like a box of chocolates.
And some of those slight differences in variation in wording could mean something
But
different.
when they had an actual conversation later on, she said, life's a box of chocolates. So that's it.
T. Martin says in the chat, I don't think he knew about mom, start referring to the mom getting with the principal in order to get him in school. I don't think Forrest knew even as an adult is basically what she's saying. So, but his mother did believe in him, and I think that was probably like her biggest gift was that.
Did she though? Right? That was your question.
Is she didn't believe in him?
Well, there's that. Well, you can't quote have a crutch, right? And it could be like if it's done today, it's seen as mean spirited, right? That we ain't got time to be dealing with all that, right? Not that I believe in you. That hey, we gonna just act like this ain't even happening. Right, we ain't gonna accept that. You know what I mean? That's sort of a language.
So well, her dedication though to protecting him from kind of the harshness of the world at least did shape his kind of optimistic and trusting nature. He was able to trust her, and he did have a positive view on the world, which I think was important for him not to be this like depressed and downtrodden sort of individual. And even after she died, Forrest, he keeps on carrying on the lessons and making her influence enduring in his life. Going to the chat, Shy Girl, hey, you never know what you're gonna get talking about life is like a box of chocolates or life is a box of chocolates, whichever one you want to remember. And T. Martin says able-minded adults have a hard time when they realize, quote, Uncle Bobby wasn't uncle. Listen, some things can mess up your understanding, even as an adult.
Which is be understandable why Forrest wouldn't know, right? Or realize what was going on.
Shy Girl says, I wish I could get through life like Forrest. Listen.
But I don't know if you just got here, but that's what we're talking about. We all get through life like Forrest Gump. And it could possibly, from my perspective, could be hyperbole in the movie, right? But all these great things are happening to you and you're contributing these great things. You just don't look at them like that. You got to look at them like Forrest do. So when you tell your story,
you lie.
When you tell your story,
you just got to lie. You got to lie about it. So what does Forrest's relationship with his mother tell us about the influence of nurturing on success? Because, you see all kind of different parents in these movies. Precious mama wasn't very nurturing in the movie Precious. And, we're just talking about movies. But, I mean, in real life, I'm sure we've all seen different types of parents. Some who are very nurturing, some who are middle of the road, some who don't appear to be nurturing at all, right? But his mother was quite nurturing. How do you guys see her role, as this nurturer and the influence of nurturing on success? Does nurturing help or hinder you? Can there be too much nurturing?
Yeah, I'm sure it's a balance in everything. I don't know.
I think that, especially for other abled people, that there should be a good balance. Like you need somebody who understands what the needs are so that you are not beaten down, but at the same time has the fire lit under your butt, because you have to understand that you're going to probably have to be better than, I guess you would call it typically abled people. You're going to have to be better than them in most ways, right? Yeah. And it's not unlike being a woman or a minority, right? You go in, that it's not a level and equal playing field, and it is the responsibility, I feel, of the parent to make that clear in age appropriate ways to the child. Shy Girl says she was protective and told him not to let anything stop him. Yeah, she was protective of him. And I think that it's such a hard balance to figure out, though. Like, at what point do you let go? At what point is your protection,
Well, So it's different, right?
hurtful to the child.
It's different from so-called able-minded, right?
Hmm.
Because when do you let go? We talked about what's the one with the typewriter lady?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We did like a whole video on that on our Axiom Amnesia channel. Now I've got to look that up right quick.
I can't believe I can't remember it.
I know. I'm looking it up. Give me a quick second, but go ahead with your thought.
What? That was it. That was
well about generally what happened in that. Just give a brief.
Well, I don't even know what it's called. So
well, I'll tell you.
I don't know what the machine called. I don't know any of the technique or anything.
So Tell Them You Love Me is the name of the thing.
Tell Them You Love Me.
Right. And it's just basically about this woman who has this relationship. She's a married white professor. Anna Stubblefield has a relationship with a nonverbal 30-year-old black man with cerebral palsy, Derek Johnson. And so the situation sparked controversy when the man's mother alleges that her son was incapable of consent because she went and did the do.
Right, and it was it's called facilitated communication, where she basically took his finger and would hold his hand supposedly, and then he would type out messages and back and forth, and it's all about consent. But it's about, my point was about his brother and his mother basically still caring for him and stuff, right? At some point you just can't let go when a situation like this, right? You have to have guardianship, or in some instances conservatorships, right?
Right.
So yeah. So sometimes there's not opportunity where you can just let the reins go. But that's what his mother did.
And the question since we brought this up, I want to throw out there for when we get to the part about Jenny is could Forrest consent? But,
but see, this was one of those times where they would just you would just boil it all up or down to IQ, right? And that's how they communicated that to us in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, his IQ is 75. Bam, let's just get on with it, right? Even though there's lots of nuance and stuff that we know about now.
Right.
That we can apply to see what was going on with Forrest.
And Derek, from that other story, Derek was way different than Forrest. Forrest could take care of himself. Derek needed,
and he was verbal.
Yeah, he was verbal. Like Derek needed people to take care of all of his daily needs. He could not do any of that. So that's a very different situation than Forrest. I want to be clear about that. But yeah, so and keeping with Forrest's mother, how does Forrest's mother that nurturing that we were just talking about, like, shape his outlook on life? Do you think that the nurturing made him more positive, or do you think that the nurturing hindered him and
I don't know,
it was just accidental?
Why are we calling it nurturing? Right? Are we just talking about how she raised him?
Well, the idea of that, first of all, the idea that someone could love you so unconditionally. Right. Yeah. And I don't think, even though she gave him tough love in terms of believing in himself, I think he never felt unloved or, by his mother. Right.
But
that was
would
never
he even know, right? Would be another thing too, right? With the naivete. But I think that she gave him what he needed to say that, hey, you go out and you do whatever. But I think it probably could have happened before, but he always went back to his mother's mantras too, right? At times, right?
Mama says.
When she say that don't let nothing stop you and all that other stuff, then he took that and that's how he lifted out. And I don't remember which movie we were talking about, but I brought up Moral Oral. Maybe it was Fresh, right? Where they give you these ideas and then the person just unknowingly, unwittingly go along basically to the extreme of that. And I don't know if this was an extreme case, but that's what it is. She told him these things, and then Forrest just lived his life out in that manner with those things in mind.
Right. And he really did, So Forrest's, mother was definitely like the most influential figure in his life, I think, and it's hard to say because I go back and forth with, did she give too much, not enough in this category or that category? And it's easy to judge from the sidelines and, because you think about how hard it must have been during that time. Luckily, she had income from owning like a boarding house because her husband had walked out on Forrest and his mother, So it was just she was left to try to raise a child on her own. at a time where
you couldn't get a credit card.
Yeah, where she probably couldn't even get her own
account.
bank account. She had to have her daddy or her brother go probably sign for the bank account and stuff. So, what about, okay, so this is going to be right up your alley. But what does this movie and his relationship, Forrest, with his mother reveal about the theme of parental sacrifice in the film? Now, let me just tell you what Heit is going to say about parental sacrifice. This movie here, which is also starring Tom Hanks, which has come out, is a movie that you all must see. It is so good, but it is like people have really overlooked the film. It is
very underrated as well. It is
underrated, yes. You know,
it's a amazing film. H-E-R-E here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it is. Like,
but this is like one of the central themes of the movie.
Yeah.
Is parental sacrifice.
But she definitely sacrificed them.
She had to give it up.
Them cakes. She sacrificed
those cakes.
So that he could be on that track. Like, so what Woody said was basically
Woody in the YSL trial.
Yeah, once they said he was slow and they put him in slow classes, then they stopped teaching him, basically, is what happened.
I would like to know, because I know somebody in the chat is probably a teacher, a special education teacher and stuff. Like, how does it go once you get in that track? Does it become very different for the students? Are there students who are in the track of, special education or special needs within like the public school system that don't really need to be in there, but they get there for other reasons,
And then, think about it. After like 2 years, maybe a year or two, you behind. So then you can't really, you're just stuck there once you put there.
Because just look at all of these pandemic babies, like they have just been, just stifled because their education was so interrupted.
I guess. Well, so I think the issue with something like that is that we have these markers that don't make sense, right? And you can't just keep going along with the markers if something is put in the way, right? If there's a hurdle, you can't just be like, all right, everybody, the race is still going. And then you 2 minutes later, you should be halfway around the track, but you're not because there was this big thing that stopped the race.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So that should be taken into account, but it's just not because the way this system is set up. But
yeah.
But that is why you would want, she did so much she was smart enough, right, to make sure that they didn't put her kid in the track where he possibly wouldn't be able.
She was really selfless, in a lot of ways regarding him. And then just think about it. As he got older, she still had to be there for him, perhaps even more than she would have for a fully able bodied, adult.
But what did she do?
Well, I mean, she was at home running the
he didn't need her
boarding house or whatever.
He figured it out.
Well, no, but she was the shoulder to cry on. He didn't have any friends, and Bubba got gone in Vietnam. So
I see it different as a man, I guess.
Well, how you see it as a man? I like to hear this part.
I don't need no shoulder to cry on. Whatever.
You don't need a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, so that's very different. Like, to say that he has his mother for her guidance and stuff, is to say, oh, she was there for him for what? Like, it's just, all right, go cry in a corner somewhere. I don't know.
Bruh, that makes me sad to think that men might not receive the emotional support that they might need because it's perceived as not even a need.
Well, whatever.
Like maybe men, look, all y'all ladies out there, just give the men in your lives a hug today because they might just need a hug. Heit says
why
no.
Y'all need to be crying though to begin with? Like, all right,
why does who need to be crying?
But it's not about the cry. It's why the person is crying is the issue. Right? So what is there to do? Nothing to do. Oh, she left you again. All right. What am I supposed to do?
Because of this meme.
Go cry to yourself.
I know you've seen that meme where it's like a picture of like FaceTime and it's somebody's face looking crazy on the phone and they're like, this is me while my friend is crying their hearts out, not knowing what to say. This is me not knowing what to say while they're like, bawling and crying really hard.
What? All right.
But
get better. Never mind. I'm not going to say it.
But Shy Girl in the chat says, I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. That is a line that Forrest Gump says because Jenny tried to tell Forrest that he don't know what love is. So, she trying to dismiss him too. But yeah, Forrest and his mother, that relationship definitely was one of the foundational relationships in the entire film. And when she dies, it definitely reveals like this importance of maternal figures for people, It's one of the most significant and emotional turning points in the film because her being gone leaves this void in Forrest's life. Jenny is not consistent. Forrest doesn't really have any friends except maybe Lieutenant Dan a little bit, but he's sort of there, sort of not dealing with his own demons, right? But he carries with him the wisdom and the strength of his mother and what she told him and taught him and stuff like that. And, she was like a central figure in the film and she was lost. So I think that, a moment has to be taken to kind of acknowledge what that would have meant to the character, what it means to people in real life when these types of losses occur. So, but Forrest was emotionally resilient and he seemed like, because after his mother passes, then Jenny shows up again and he seemed really, really happy that she was there. But then when Jenny disappears, what I often wonder is, was that disappearing act that Jenny did on him, was he sad and start running because of Jenny? Or was it the combination of, I lost my mother, then I thought you were here and you're gone, so whatever. I don't know, just me thinking out loud. But yeah, so that's kind of Forrest and his mother and that relationship. So let's see what the chat is talking about. JBuggin88, welcome, says, my two boys are in preschool special ed in Missouri. When they are in special ed, they teach them less because it's different funding. They will be going to a private preschool in a couple of months. It will be full time.
Is it the funding? Or is it because they don't have the resources to have the special ed teachers?
Maybe that's the funding, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Maybe, yeah. So, and the question that I would wonder is, so it's interesting to me that they identify this even as early as preschool.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get in your business and be asking personal questions, but that's interesting to me. So the next thing that we should talk about though is Forrest Gump himself, like a kind of a character analysis of Forrest. Was Forrest Gump a fool or was he the wisest man alive, or maybe both? I don't know, But Forrest is often dismissed as like this simple-minded type of man, but he navigates life with honesty and kindness, and it leads him to success ultimately. So we should explore whether Forrest's approach to life is actually a form of wisdom rather than ignorance.
Well, I don't know about wisdom. It could just be that it's moral, right? Is that the moral of the story? That his morals were in the right spot, and that what brought him all of his success, right? So he's not worrying about all the things that we worry about, money. He kind of worried about their relationship, though. I don't know. But money, relationships, all this other foolishness, and he's not occupied with that, right? So then when he's running and he's just like, it happens, he's like, what happens? Shit, right? That, and he's just doing it. Oh, my boy say that he gon' even though it was unsuccessful, the shrimping business, right?
Right.
Well, I'm gonna just go ahead and start that thing, right? And he just done that, had his heart in the right place, just didn't stop, and then the success came, right?
Yeah.
He was just running and he got on the football team, all this stuff, right? Because he didn't have these ulterior motives and stuff when he was doing all these things that he was doing. It brought about some level of success in his life, I think.
Shy Girl says Forrest seemed fearless. Jenny and his mama was his weakness. And, so this makes me wonder, because like fear and all of that other stuff, I mean, you can have basic fears, I'm afraid of a snake, I'm afraid of this, right? But then some of the fear comes from sophisticated thought, right? And scenarios
what
that
some people call overthinking
too. that maybe is not what Forrest was doing. And maybe that's also why he seemed fearless, because he didn't have the fears, because he really wasn't delving that deep into a lot of this stuff.
Sometimes I might bring up something and people be like, well, you're overthinking. I'm like, what? You didn't think about these things that could happen? Like Temple Grandin is a good example, right? And it's like, wait, people aren't thinking about these things? I was just watching something about some people cleaning Big Ben. I don't know if it was real or not. In 1980. And to me, 1980 is not that long ago. And they didn't have any safety harnesses and stuff on. And I'm like, wait, what?
They just y'all out there cleaning a big old clock in a metropolitan area.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, but y'all didn't think of it? And there's probably somebody at the time who said something. And it's like, man, you just overthinking it. Just get out there and clean a clock.
Yeah, never mind the accidental deaths that occur. But yeah, so Forrest Gump, as we know, he was like the protagonist of the film, of course. And it's, again, we think of Forrest, we think about innocence and unwavering optimism, deep loyalty. And again, I know I keep saying this, but I just want to reiterate for those of you who may have just come in, that despite him having this low IQ of 75 and facing numerous challenges, he approaches life with simplicity and sincerity, and it allows him to succeed in ways that others could not foresee for him. His mother had instilled belief in himself, and he was no different than anybody else. And this shaped his self-assurance and positive outlook on life. So his personality really is defined by this honesty and kindness and genuine love for other people. And we've touched on that a little bit, but that really is kind of what's at the core of who Forrest is, right? Like, we didn't see anything in the movie that was really vindictive, except the one thing that would get Forrest angry is if anybody messed with Jenny, he was going to knock you out. He was going to knock you out. He thought every time we saw Forrest do anything aggressive, it was always about Jenny, with the exception of being in the military. But even then, he spent more time doing the rescuing, right?
Yeah.
Shy Girl says, overthinking causes me to not accomplish a lot of things. Well, Shy Girl, I think you have to look at what is overthinking.
Yeah, exactly. I think that term is being used incorrectly most of the time that people use it, right?
Well, it's the connotation of it, right? Yeah. It's like to say that it's bad that you have thoroughly thought things through. Yeah.
What is it called when you do the mitigation and whatever, right? You got to do all of that before you do something so that you know. Like what the possibilities are.
You got the best chances of success. But there is a thing where people will call
like failures.
Mm-hmm. They'll call it like analysis to paralysis, right?
Analysis paralysis.
You've done analyzed so much that you got so many options before you and so many permutations that you can't make the decision. And I think that's really what people mean by overthinking. But the solution that most people will suggest to quote overthinking under those terms is to just say, I'm not going to think about it
risk
at all.
Assessment, right?
And
that's what I'm saying. Like
a risk assessment.
When you talk about risk assessment and the possibilities, you'll be like, oh, but what if this? And then that's get labeled as overthinking when it's really maybe saving yourself. Like, so I built this thing where we can where we can stream on all these different platforms, right? If I don't go through all of those iterations of what if this and that and this and that and this and that happens, then we could have a huge failure, right? Something that can completely go wrong, right? But that's just the type of person I am. Like with almost everything, I need to know. And part of risk assessment is how much time do you need to spend on this possibility too? Right.
And I think that's like for people who are quite analytically minded. And I guess both of us have that kind of background and ability just because of what our day jobs have been. You guys know Heit is a software engineer. And, my background is in, medical device manufacturing and product management, which is kind of related to that, meaning process is important, meaning that risk assessment is important in all of this.
And then
so
like
it's not
cybersecurity and stuff.
Yeah. So it's not something that you should fear. So back to the answer, if you're finding that you're not moving forward with things because you have too many options in front of you, then focus on how to narrow those options better, not to just say, I'm not going to think about it. Focus on, okay, I feel a little overwhelmed. overwhelmed. Maybe that means you need to take a little break. Maybe that means you need to step away. Maybe that means you need another step in the process to narrow the options so you're not overwhelmed. But
exactly.
you know,
and if it's something that you have to look at and say, what is the risk that's involved? And sometimes you could just jump out and do the thing, right? Because the negative impact isn't that great.
Right. So, you know, so that's
like,
just a little
I
bit
always
on
bring up Temple
overthinking.
Grandin because she's just this popular example of someone and who focuses on what could go wrong, basically. It's one of her aspects and what she's known for.
Yeah. So, you know, back to Forrest and his personality, though, you know, we look at him and he really, you know, we're always talking about the character arcs and all of that in these films, but his personality really doesn't change at much. Like, he is actually, as a protagonist, a quite static character, right? He undergoes very little change in terms of his core character and traits. And he remains true to himself, and his life is a testament to the idea that success can come from being authentic and kind and following one's heart. While other characters, they experience the growth and the change. We saw what happened with Lieutenant Dan, for instance. We saw what happened with Jenny. I don't know if I guess we could call Jenny growth, but, you know, Jenny had a quite tragic story that we're going to get to. You know, but Forrest's journey is one of consistency, and it makes him almost a foil to characters like Jenny and, you know, really contrasts with the turbulent life that we saw, right? So I think he's the perfect protagonist, you know, being simple, authentic.
What?
He drives the narrative forward.
I don't know. Why does it work? He isn't driving it forward, though. I think
his
things that happen
he does
to
on
him,
accident, right?
Yeah.
You know, that caused it to move forward, or I say does on accident, but you know what I mean. Like, that's how he's moving it forward.
The world is happening to him.
But his journey is guided by love and duty and faith, and it just serves as the heart of the film, and that is the thing that makes it move forward, right?
Yeah.
You know, that, I mean, to me. But let us talk more about Forrest and his other ableness. You know, how does his intelligence or his lack thereof affect his life experiences? What is that like for somebody who is told from the beginning, you know, you're not as smart as everyone else? And not only that, but they are smart enough to realize it, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he so-called realized it in the film, right? Because every time somebody be like, ain't you stupid? My mama says stupid is stupid does, right? So I don't know if he necessarily realized it, but I think everything we talked about concerning him up until this point answers that, right?
Yeah.
And how it affected him because of his naivete and all of that other stuff, right? And him being fearless, right? Or seemingly fearless, right? Because he's not having these same worries that everyone else has.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because I hadn't really, until Shy Girl brings it up, I hadn't really thought long and hard about just the fearless nature of who he was in this film. And that might be a good tie back into heroism, right? Because, you know, the heroes always seem to be fearless. So maybe he does have more traditional characteristics of the hero than we really think about. You know, but let's talk about fate versus free will. How do we see that in Forrest's life? You know, throughout the film, he seems to have life happen to him. You just brought that up, rather than actively shaping it. And so his journey raises the question of whether his success and failures are a matter of his fate or whether he had agency over his life. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it was both, right? Because all these things happen to him, the unpredictability of it, right? The randomness of what's going on, but he's still making choices and decisions, well, possibly, to do these things, right? Hey, I'm going to run out there and get Lieutenant Dan, right? I'm going to run out there and get Bubba. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to start this shrimping company, you know? So he's at the same time making it, and that's what this whole discussion throughout time of free will is about, right? How much of it is, you know, your own advocacy versus just what's predestined.
Right. So, I don't know. Like, so as a general thing, do you believe in fate or free will or both? Or, because that's like that's the basic philosophy question.
As a man of science, I believe that ever since the Big Bang, whatever that is, everything was set into motion because I believe that there are these interactions with stuff of the universe and it's just bound to happen, right? But it feels good to believe and feel like I'm making these decisions, right? So in a sense, I do have free will because I don't know what's going to happen and I think that I'm going to do it and I do it. So there you go.
I think
the marrying of both.
I believe in like limit, and I guess limited free will is how I would term it, right? I believe that there is a certain amount of free will that I have to act within a certain list of possibilities at any given time.
But that's probably the anomaly of it all, right? Of so-called living things is that, wait, out of all of this, now something that comes along that doesn't just abide strictly by the laws of physical science.
Another factor is introduced.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's another question about Forrest. He clearly is an outsider. We see that he's an outsider from the very, very beginning of the film. The point when he gets on the bus and I guess I'll do my impression again of the little boy who says, "Seats taken," right? He is an outsider. Like the kids are, he's bullied, they chase him, he's running. This is how he finds out that he has the ability to run really fast, is when he literally runs out of the braces that are on his legs while the bullies are chasing him and stuff. So given all of that, how does his status as this outsider shape his perspective on like these historical events? Does he see himself as like, oh, I'm an outsider anyway, so it doesn't matter? Like, has he just gotten used to not being in the in crowd, so he's able to not have the impediment like a lot of us do, right? If you're worried about thinking, oh, what are people going to think of me? What are people going to, like, he's not caught up in any of those thoughts.
Right, exactly. That's what I was saying earlier. He don't have those same obligations to even think of that, like, oh, what group is going to accept me? I need to be making friends and this and that. Like, none of that is even there.
Well, and then here's the other question related to this is that, with him participating in like several major historical events in this film, but he still remains an outsider. Like, think about how many times he got famous in this film, right? Or was significant in some way.
That's how we know
you're standing next to the president. You're here. You're on the national ping pong team. You're over there.
He
you're,
won a medal of honor.
A medal of honor. And like you're all these places, but never when you're on Johnny Carson or whatever the late night show he was on. Never when you're on there are they like, oh yeah, we know you did 10 other things that got you famous.
The hangers on would have been there once you show up, right? It's like, all right, here we go. You got an entourage now. You made Bubba Gump. You know what I'm saying? You're the owner of Bubba Gump Shrimp. So, them people gonna come and they're gonna be there. And with someone like Forrest, hey, you don't even see it coming, right? And he accepted everybody.
He did.
Who came into his life, right? So his friends, Lieutenant Dan, Bubba, Jenny, right? Those became his friends just because they were there.
Yeah. So.
And then like even the people on the park bench, well, the bus bench, right?
Yeah.
He's sitting there and he just starts talking to them, but they don't accept him in that same way, right? Like, hey, let me get your number. I'll call you later.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't like one of them got her interest piqued when they're like, wait a minute, you're Forrest Gump from the Bubba Gump company,
that was the man,
or was it a man? I didn't remember, but
he didn't believe it.
Yeah, so like, but your interest is piqued when you have a touch point that you can actually recognize. Otherwise, you're just this nothing person that is an outsider and I don't care. The problem,
why do I need to talk to you, right?
Well, and the problem with other rising people is that you don't even really know. You don't know what you're missing out on. You don't know. You really don't.
Right. And you could just be hearing a story and you're like, man, they lying. You know what I'm saying? And the whole time they done this historic thing.
Yes. So Justice Poetic says,
okay,
happy to catch a live, and Lieutenant Dan got new legs. Yeah, at the wedding, that's what he says. And then I think Forrest just goes with the flow is also something that he or she, because I'm not quite sure if it's a guy or a gal, but that they say. And that's kind of true. And but back to the free will question, can he help but just go with the flow? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Forrest has certain types of limitations. Sherry Latrice also says, "Hey, glad I caught the live. I love Forrest Gump." Yeah, but this is a great movie, and I'm glad that you caught the live too, Sherry. So it's good to see you because we always see you in the chat too. So, we were just talking about this idea of being an outsider. And I hate to just kind of take up time with these anecdotal stories, but, I was thinking about, one of the things is, how people will see us in the midst of a thing and then kind of assume that we're outsiders in some way. I was thinking about how when we were walking and we were in our workout clothes or whatever, and we were walking up to some place and we wear backpacks when we walk because, Heit went in because it's hot here in Texas. Okay. Heit went and bought us what do you call that thing? A
camelback.
A camelback, yeah. Mm-hmm. So that you can have the water in the pack and just sip it through the straw in your backpack and all that. Plus, then when we're out, if we want to stop at the store or whatever, we can get stuff from the store.
And if I pass out, then I could just
and if you pass out, I can squirt some of the water in your face from the camelback. But, there are times because of, I guess, how we look while we're out shuffling about and doing our thing and getting our exercise and whatever, that people, and we know it's a fact, but people have mistaken us for being unhoused. And I was like, okay. One lady was nice enough to ask if we were straight on food one day, which I really appreciated after getting over my confusion for why she would be asking me this question, because she slowed her car down and asked the question. But I appreciated that she would be looking out for somebody who she thought this. But more importantly, there were times and have been times when we interact and go into stores and stuff like that, and people are not so nice. And it's disappointing how people treat you when they otherize you. And the same people, if we show up in a different form, don't treat us the same way. So you already know what it's about. And I just, I want to challenge people that regardless of how you feel like you're otherizing somebody, that you should be treating folks decent regardless of what you think they have or don't have or how they look and all that. So that's my soapbox for today.
We're live on YouTube, Twitch, and Steam.
Okay.
I said Steam and Kick.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so go ahead and drop a super chat or Cash App and we'll holler at you.
Yes, and we have one last thing about Forrest that I think we should talk about.
Thing.
Well, about Forrest, his character, not the whole, live. We got so much to go that honestly, I'm looking at it. We are not going to be able to get through all of this in one fell swoop. So I don't know, maybe we do a segment later, during one of the lives, because some of the lives might be just about one movie, and then some of them might actually be about different topics from different movies. So we'll just have to see how it all works out and what we can get through today. But I'm looking at Just As Poetics, says his limitations were his strength. He does exactly what he's told, which makes him great for the military. And when he's told to keep his eyes on the ball playing ping pong, he does just that. But with the ping pong, he had to not only be able to follow instructions, but he had to have the physical coordination.
He had that thing that Cherie ain't got.
I know we laugh about this all the time. I'm not a very coordinated person physically. I just don't have it. I don't have good balance.
He has a physical IQ of 75.
Oh my gosh. So the last question on the personality of Forrest is
hold on. That might not be complete. You were able to do tennis.
Yeah. So I mean, I have some hand-eye coordination. I am just clumsy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe there's something going on with my inner ear and just always has been. Maybe there's some deformity inside the ear, like that just doesn't allow my balance to be what everyone else's is. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't get a lot of that balance.
But yeah, doing what he's told is like what I was talking about with Moral Oral, that cartoon or claymation show. That's just what it was. They tell him to do something or give him these mantras or whatever, and he acts them out basically.
Mm-hmm.
To the extreme, to greatness, like is how Forrest Gump did it.
Yes. So the last question let's talk about Forrest and him running across the country. What was like the significance of him deciding that he's going to run across the country? He does this after his mother dies and then after Jenny leaves him again for yet another time. And he just starts running and he doesn't stop, and he's running and he grows a beard and everything, and like he becomes famous because he's running. And does it like symbolize his quest for meaning, or is it just a personal escape? Why is he running? Like, what is the answer to this question? Why does he choose to do that?
Forrest don't know
Go
no
to
better.
the comments. Tell us why he ran and just kept running, and then just decided he'd stop just like that.
So I just watched what's the old boy name? Roy Woods Jr. special, right?
Yeah.
And this line from Mystical that he had in this song that I always remember. But Mystical say, better get some business about yourself. That's what you better do, right? And that's what I think it was Roy Wood Jr. was saying, better get some business, right? Like, he ain't have nothing to do.
So he went and got some business, and his business was,
he ain't have no business. He needed something. That's why he was running. He just ran until he got tired, bro.
He ran until he was too tired to run anymore. But, I guess metaphorically speaking, it could be like a representation of human longing and the desire for clarity or direction in his life, maybe. Because, when you're running or when you're traveling, direction is important, maybe, but in his case, it didn't seem important at all.
Exactly. Some people, they like,
it was just to have the journey.
I run to think and ease my mind. I'm on the countryside just thinking. He ain't have no thoughts. You know what I'm saying? He was just
running with a bunch of people running behind him after a while.
And then they like, hey, he's about to speak. Like, he gonna just say something. So they were following him because they thought he had this great reason. Because when people do stuff like that, like I say, we have all these attachments and stuff. We're trying to get money and trying to get a message out. And they like, all right, we're running with him. What is the message? Why is he running? Because anybody do it now, what they doing? I'm doing this to bring attention to this and that. He stopped. I'm going home, basically. Like, that's
Jerry
it.
Latrice said in a movie that he wanted to put the past behind him.
Yeah.
So, no, I see that for sure.
Running away from the past.
But are you running? Are you running from your past? And the other thing is he seemed to be running without any clear goal. It wasn't, I need to run 20 miles in this direction to get away from my past. My past is to the east. I need to run west. I don't, like there wasn't any sophisticated logic nor a goal.
He just said, so I started running.
Yeah. So he ran.
And he didn't stop. He just kept going, right? Is what he said, right? There was no reason, basically, to stop. So he just kept going.
But let's just take this and unpack it a little bit more. What about the emotional pain and the desire for understanding why? Because, see, at this point, I think, okay, so there's this point where when Bubba dies, one of the last things Bubba says is, why did this happen? And I think this is Forrest's why did this happen moment in the film, right? And he's like, why did this happen? Like, I need clarity. And it is also, I think, points to the emotional pain that he's in. Let's just talk about in people's lives. When you see somebody and they start doing a thing and they won't stop, or they have lost control, or they start beating somebody up and they won't stop, their hands are bloody. When they start banging the ground, or they start doing something even self-destructive, right? And they won't stop. Then that to me is indicative of like some serious emotional pain that an intervention almost has to occur, or they just gotta, how you see something where kids throw a tantrum or anything, they like, you just gotta let them tire themselves out. Yeah. You see people who say things like that, right?
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, why do we need reasons? Everything else he done, he didn't really have a reason except for like the stuff with Jenny, right? And the stuff that involved the people who he actually knew. Do whatever for Lieutenant Dan or for Bubba. I need to go do this for Jenny. I need to go and see my mama. Everything else is just stuff, right? That happened to him. There was no reason that he was doing those things. Okay, he started playing ping pong because somebody threw a ping pong ball, right? And then they told him just look at the ball, and then he just started doing it, right? That's how that happened. He started running because he was just running, not this first run, the first run, right? When he started playing football and stuff. He just done it because somebody said, hey, play football. So I think it was just about things that he was doing for people were maybe the only intentional things. I don't know. Maybe y'all know in the comments of some things that weren't. just
T.
for
Martin
the people who he knew.
says Forrest Gump is just living for the moment, no more, no less, zero motives. Us now, everything we do, we analyze it. We want to be impactful. We want to inspire, and we are crazy as a Betsy bug. We are unsatisfied and always longing for something. You might be onto something with that, because especially with this analyzing and less for me about wanting to be impactful, although that does matter, but I want to know. I just want to know for knowing's sake. Like, I want to understand, and maybe even almost to a point of obsession, right? Because even like with this film, like, I want to know what was going through his mind.
That's what people do with
was he not thinking?
With their pets, right? They're like, oh, when this happened, the dog does this. Yeah, so you know what I'm saying? Like, it just happened. They just did it. Why did the dog run around the tree 3 times? Who knows? He just did it.
Gosh.
I'm not saying Forrest Gump is a dog, but we don't have that level, right? We have these things that are in our way, right?
Yeah.
That, you know, these obligations that we have to fulfill. And we don't come across people like Forrest who don't have that. These predispositions, right? Of, you know, all the stuff that T. Martin described, right? We don't know. So we got to try to put some meaning on it. And just cause.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true, you know. So, speaking of Forrest, we find out at the end of the film that Forrest has a son. And so we should talk a little bit about this relationship. Forrest's son, is Forrest really the father? Like, I know that might be controversial, and does it even matter? But I feel like we should ask this question because we know Jenny was for them streets. She was out there, you know, she was living wild. And by the time he meets him, his son was, I don't know, what is maybe like 4 or 5 years old.
The first time I saw the movie, that was my thought. Like, wait, how you know this yours, bro?
Because she said it, and it wasn't no DNA test they were doing
what
back in.
What year was this? Was it the late 80s maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. He could do a blood test.
So.
But see, he wasn't thinking about any of that. All I know, I love Jenny, and then now.
I love Jenny, and now we have a son, and his name is Forrest anyway. So, you know, just as Poetic says, Forrest, you are not the father. So let's talk about why we might feel this way, or why we just have to ask this question. Forrest's relationship with his son is one of the most unconditional love, protection, and devotion type of relationships that we see in the film. It really kind of mimics Forrest and his mother, right?
Yeah.
But Forrest was initially concerned that his son might share the same intellectual limitations that Forrest had struggled with. And so he's greatly relieved to learn that his son is mentally typical. And this realization erases Forrest's worries and allows him to focus on raising his son with the same care and attention that his mother gave him.
And with this being a movie, I have to ask, was his mother his?
Shut up.
What, she was at the boarding house and stuff, right?
Or did somebody leave Forrest behind? Listen, we got a whole... We just have a whole...
So that would be straight full circle, right? And then even if it is or not, he still accept the child as his own because he's Forrest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just another person who he's now attached to, who accepted him, right? Because a child ain't really got no choice in that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, so Forrest, he was eager. He becomes a dedicated father. He said, let me wife you up, Jenny. He married her and everything. And his son is like this continuation of Forrest's legacy and comfort and whatever, because Jenny is buried on his property. He just goes out to the gravestone and you know, talks to Jenny and hey, about what a good father he's been. He's like, I take care of him. You know, and I think Forrest is really proud of himself. This is all toward the end of the movie. He's really proud because he actually is doing something more than just taking care of himself in this moment. He's like, see, I'm like, in a way, kind of like, I'm good enough to be a parent. I'm good enough to be a good parent, you know, and be good to my son the way, you know, that everybody, that my mother was to me or whatever. And so this kind of gives him some level of purpose and closure after Jenny's death, right? Because without this kid, this is why I asked the question, does it matter if he's
Jenny,
the father?
Right?
Without Jenny, yeah.
His only purpose with Jenny was finding Jenny.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. If there was no Jenny, what would Forrest be doing? Well, he would be doing what he'd be doing, but there would never just be this thing always tugging at him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then the purpose after that is, all right, Jenny gone now. I just have this kid who, I don't know, he probably just gonna parrot what his mother told him.
Yeah, but it's kind of like the best of all worlds, because he is able to love himself through his child, and he also is able to love Jenny without her still being here anymore, you know? So, Justice Poetic says Forrest did the impossible. He turned a pro into a housewife.
Well, so when you're down like that, I don't know. She did it, right? When she had nothing else left, she did that boy wrong. We'll talk about her later.
Yeah, we're going to have to get to her later. But so go to the comments. Is this really Forrest's son? Is Forrest Jr. actually his biological son, given Forrest intellectual, shortcomings and Jenny's past relationships? And then the next question is, did it matter if this was his son or not? In the scheme of things, did it matter if this was his biological son?
To some people, it does, right? To the child, once they find out later on, when 2015 comes around, and then they take these DNA tests on these websites, then you're gonna be wondering.
Well, this is like such a hard thing. Like, do you think it was his son or not? Or do you think it matters?
Well, it don't matter, but for the sake of the movie, it is. She said it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they looked alike or something. I don't know.
I accept it as his son. I mean, they dressed alike, but only because he was dressing them. I mean,
No, I think it's not. Because that's the type of person she was.
Ooh.
She just came last minute. She needed somebody.
She needed to unload that kid on somebody who she knew who she could count on.
Yeah, and she didn't know who else she was messing with either, because she was all free in the 70s and stuff.
Well, Justice Poetic says, sorry, I really hated the end. She just used him up. Forrest just wanted a part of her, and she knew it.
Yeah. But we ain't talk about her yet, but she had issues, right?
She had issues, right?
She just
right.
So
maybe she deserves some level of grace.
Played throughout the movie was her issues
for how it manifested itself. Yes.
And it doesn't really matter if Forrest gets what he wants too. If all I want is this lady and I'm happy with it, and a child, and now I got the child and I'm happy, what could possibly be the problem?
Yeah. T. Martin says Jenny was for the street.
Unless she brought some of them things to the house.
Yeah.
To your boy.
Yeah. So, hard to say. I think that it probably was not his child biologically. I think that it doesn't matter, because the child is going to have a better life and a better situation than a Rolling Stone daddy who might have had the same issues as Jenny with the lifestyle she was leading out in them streets, or might have been a John or something else. So I think that the kid is way better off. Jenny made one good decision, which was to bring that child over there to Forrest. And they both, ultimately, they needed each other, though. The kid needed Forrest, and Forrest needed the kid.
Yeah.
And I think that, to get back to the idea of randomness in this film, maybe that is the fate, right? Is that in the end, they got what they needed, right? The guy who seemed like he was behind the 8 ball and all these unexpected and terrible things happened to him. He didn't get the girl in the end. Well, he had her temporarily.
Yeah.
But he got a piece of her. He got the love.
I don't think so. From the perspective of Forrest, is it a piece? He got what he wanted.
Yeah, he did. He married her. That was his wife. And he got the body out back.
The body out back.
I mean, I didn't mean it the way it sounded, but like, she's buried in the backyard and he talks to her. I mean, that's obviously not the same as her being alive.
Yeah.
But he married her. He has the kid with his same name.
He got everything he wanted.
Yeah. So I think it was a happy ending for him. And it just was, I don't know. It just is. But this is one of the few one of the few films that's touching, but yet it didn't make me cry in this movie.
Huh.
It didn't make me cry the way sometimes these movies will, be tear jerkers for me. But I'll just have to clear up here to say that there really isn't any direct evidence to suggest that Forrest Jr. is not Forrest's biological child. Jenny's confession to Forrest in the hospital before she dies implies that Forrest is indeed the father, because she just says, hey, you the daddy. I named him Forrest. He named after his daddy. So while the film doesn't provide any explicit generic or medical tests or anything else, genetic tests or anything else that's going on, the emotional truth of Jenny's words and her decision to raise the child as Forrest's, especially after the years of struggling and pushing him away and, being for the streets, as T. Martin said, I just think this meant a lot. This was her one good decision, and the notion of paternity is ultimately secondary to the emotional bond and the love that develops between Forrest and his son. So in short, this theory that maybe it's not really Forrest's child biologically is speculative, but the film does present Forrest as the biological father. And so, we do have to go with that. But to speculate is indeed interesting and fun.
Yeah.
So should we talk about Bubba next, or should we talk about, okay, let's talk about Bubba. Forrest and Bubba. Was Bubba the only true friend Forrest ever had?
Jenny was. Here we go
Jenny
again with what's the friend is. See, there we go again.
Was Jenny a true friend? Because Jenny was just popping in and out.
Just because you don't like what she does doesn't mean she isn't a true friend. Like, I'm going to say this every time.
So there's definitely something.
He was his closest friend.
He was.
Yeah, so that's probably the thing.
And then just the idea of, well, this is a little more controversial, but what about Forrest left his best friend and let him die? But we're going to get to that. Bubba may have been the only character in Forrest's life who truly understood him and accepted him, because, Bubba had the similar limitation, right? And unlike the others who had different motivations or relationships with him, Bubba really wasn't motivated. He was very happy that they just to have Forrest and Forrest have him. He even says at one point in the film, we like brothers. And this is why we're good for each other, because, we can look out for each other like brothers do. And then he invites, this is while, they're out in Vietnam, he invites Forrest to start a business with him, a shrimping business and whatever. Because so he saw Forrest's worth and use, and he's already in his head figured out how they could work the business and everything and wouldn't have to pay for rent.
I don't know if he's seen his use and all of that, but like LaToya says, he was his true friend because he was basically his mirror, right? Yeah. They were just the same. I think that Bubba would have the same assessment that we had Forrest.
Did Bubba's mama sleep with the principal?
Bruh, I don't know Bubba about all that. Too? But what happens is if you look at what happened with Bubba was only really talking about himself and stuff, right? He had this one-dimensional outlook. Everything was about, I know about shrimp, I'm going to start this. And like with Forrest accepted him as a friend, so now he is a part of him, right? Mm-hmm. So then, hey, we can start the business together now, right? Because you are my friend now, because you just sit here and listen to me all day long. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, they were just basically that much alike where, hey, might as well, right? But he was just going along for the ride like everyone else. But he had his family history of shrimp that just was guiding him.
Yeah, it was like his obsession. He had a shrimp obsession, so but Forrest's relationship with Bubba is really one of true friendship. It's built on this mutual respect and loyalty. The two bond during their time in Vietnam, where Bubba shares his dream of starting that shrimp business like we were talking about. And Forrest embraces this. So despite their intellectual challenges, Bubba and Forrest's connection, it transcends these limitations as they form deep, trusting bond. And Bubba's untimely death in the war profoundly impacts Forrest, and he honors his friend's memory by pursuing Bubba's shrimping dream and turning it into a successful business. And Forrest's loyalty to Bubba remains unwavering, and their friendship remains a cornerstone of his life. But let's just rewind, right? Because Bubba's untimely death, well, would it have happened to him if, okay, they started getting attacked, and then Forrest, Lieutenant Dan tells Forrest to run, and then Forrest can't just run a little bit. Forrest runs so long and so far that he abandons Bubba. And then by the time he remembers to go back and look for Bubba, he encounters all of these different people that he has to then rescue because he's not going to just leave him there. And then when he finally gets back to Bubba is just, he rescues Bubba, but it's over with.
That's how it goes, right? That's the mission. You know what I'm saying? If he stuck by Bubba, maybe he could have saved him, right? But he saved whoever he saw first, right? So I don't know if he necessarily left him, but yeah, it's Forrest being Forrest. So did he make a mistake in the sense that he shouldn't have ran off that way? But would he have been able to save all the people who he saved?
Well, I think the way he says it, he made a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, I think the way he says it, he's like, I made a mistake.
That's to the individual, right? But if you are a soldier in the military, then you don't decide who you saving. You don't favor one over the other in certain circumstances, right?
But what about the running? I'm saying if he never ran like that and got so far away, he
probably wouldn't have saved all the other people.
Well,
right.
So Bubba was a sacrifice.
Not a sacrifice. It's just that's
just how the cookie crumbled. That's just how the fate had it.
Look, if you get into a real stories of Vietnam, then right, that's just how things happen when you're in war, right? So maybe he's lucky he wasn't there because he probably wouldn't have made it himself, right?
Yeah,
so who knows?
You might be right.
It's Forrest Gump, right? There's a reason that he's still here. He was the luckiest guy in the world.
He really was. Luck was on his side, So let us talk about the Bubba Gump shrimp and all of that. And, Forrest did take care of Bubba's family after everything had happened. When he got his money, because, he invested in Apple, and then he had some money, and then he was able to start his shrimping business and get the boat and do all that. And then, crazy thing happens, and then they caught all that shrimp and all that, right? So the question, though, is did Forrest exploit Bubba's dreams, or did he make the promise and do what, his
I don't
friend
know.
wanted?
What's the agreement that if I'm not here, you still starting?
They didn't have an agreement, right?
Yeah.
Because they assumed they'd both still be alive.
Exactly. But does it matter? Because he's not here to do it. A lot of people start the same business. It's like, if I tell somebody my idea and then I die, then they do it. Oh, well, like, what? You know what I'm saying? Oh, well, I ain't doing it. You might as well do it. And then he paid the family, right?
So here's the devil's advocate type of thing. Forrest, he exploited Bubba's dream for his own personal gain, and he did break off some money for the family. But he
gave him a portion from somebody who wasn't even involved.
Yes, but if Bubba had been alive, maybe they would have had jobs. Maybe it would have been even bigger on his 50%. Things might have been different. But I guess they should just be happy that somebody started the business and they got some proceeds, maybe. But Bubba also had a passion for shrimping. That was clear because he couldn't stop talking about the shrimp. He had deep knowledge of the shrimping industry, and he dreamed of building a successful business, right? And so when Bubba dies in the Vietnam War, before he could see his dream realized, Forrest, without much knowledge of shrimping himself or anything, is like, yeah, I'm about to get this boat and make this thing happen. And so the question, I think, is just whether Forrest was honoring his late friend or is just kind of capitalizing on the vision, but innocently, right? He
named it Bubba Gump, right?
Yeah, but
paid the parents.
How much he paid them? I can't remember.
His share, probably half.
He paid him half. He sold the business, or you just give him a one-time payment?
No, he kept bringing
half
checks
of the
over
revenue.
there.
I mean, but I want more details.
The question is about Dan and how he had him running the stuff while he off doing other things.
Look, because if y'all don't already know, Heit is really into labor. Any film about labor, any issues of labor, Heit is into labor, and he likes fair working conditions, as do I. But yeah, so yeah, that's a good point about Lieutenant Dan.
The Killing Floor, amazing movie. I think that's the name of it. 1984.
So yeah. So I mean, that was really more of a devil's advocate question.
But so the thing is that he took your boy's vision and he realized it. I think that's a great honor. Because it wasn't going to happen at all, right? So there's that. But if Bubba was around, then Bubba knew the stuff.
Right.
Your boy didn't know nothing. He
Could've
just
been
was wasting
maybe even
money.
bigger.
He almost just wasted the money he had. Bubba would have known early what to do, how to get the shrimp, where to get them from.
Bubba already had
stuff.
his idea together. He was like, and then we could pay it off. We could live on the boat, and you ain't got to pay no rent. Like, Bubba had it all figured out as he sat there in Vietnam back to back.
Not just the business side, but just the part on they went so long they didn't even catch any shrimp. He caught 5 shrimp or something when he went out.
So I'm just reading the chat here. Justice says Forrest said he would do it and he did it, and that's the kind of guy he was. Lieutenant Dan got CEO wages. LOL. Forrest Gump was the founder. They did the head tilt together. That was the test. Shy Girl said the head tilt. But yeah, so I, as I think about the best friend that Bubba had in this, Bubba, that Forrest had in this film. How long did they know each other? It was Bubba.
Yeah, but how long did they know each other?
Probably a year.
Probably.
It was the best year of his life.
Of whose life?
Forrest Gump.
Dang, he didn't even know
maybe
how
even
bad it
Bubba.
Was in war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just think about it. Like, he knew this guy for, I don't know, let's say 2 years. If the tour lasted 2 years or however long they've been there. That's not that long of a time when you consider your life. When you get older, right, then you realize how short of a time it is.
Oh, gosh, yes.
But when you're younger, in your 20s, you're probably like, dang, Bubba was such a good friend, you know what I'm saying? And just how much of an impact he had. We probably spent a lot of time with him, though, more than you would spend with somebody who you casually meet with on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that, too. But he didn't really know him that long.
No, not.
And all I seen was he was talking about shrimp the whole time.
Yes. So here's a question: how does the portrayal of both Forrest and Bubba as mentally slow challenge the stereotypes about intellectually impaired people, intelligence, and success?
I think it's one of the best portrayals. Because the way they show it, they don't show it as a disability, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just show it as, all right, this is this perspective of this person who just happens to have what we consider an ailment, right? And then everything they care about, right, we care about is our relationship with the people whom we love and trying to find love and all that, and maybe even strike off and start a business based on the traditions of our family. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we attach to them. We didn't look at them. We didn't look down on these characters, right? We just look at them. We're rooting for them and everything, right? It's just like, dang.
Yeah.
And I think that Forrest is probably the most beloved, and Bub was probably the second most beloved character in the movie.
Yeah. And then I just think about Lieutenant Dan when he told Bubba to tuck his lip in. I don't know why. That just got me because he said he had big gums.
I just got big gums, sir.
I don't know why that just gets me.
Why?
Every time.
Big gums.
But I think to kind of get at the answer to that question, the portrayal of people is, when I just navigate through life, I think that people, I don't know, in some ways, I think if you know where you might be slightly deficient, then you can kind of figure out how to pivot in ways that help you to be successful in spite of it. But there's definitely something to be said.
Deficiency in the thinking part.
Yeah.
Right?
But like in a way, there's something to be said in a way for the people who don't go through life, like you said, as if they have some problem. They just go through life and they just exist. But I've personally seen in some people like the frustration of what it is to be attempting to compete with people who just have more intellectual abilities. and that's really hard.
Right? But so I think that the way the society is set up again is you're told, even though it may not be true, right? And I think that kind of get at that at the film. When you go to school and you see somebody's making the good grades and you're not making the good grades, and like, they're so smart, they're so smart, they're so smart. You know what I'm saying? Then you probably have this natural thing of feeling not that, right? Or at least inferior in a way.
Yeah.
Until you get around the 2010s, and then everybody on equal footing on the internet.
Everybody's smart regardless. Everybody's on the internet. Everybody comes to the comments in Axiom Amnesia and attempts to school everyone. The people who we were just talking about.
Life.
See, I know we were just talking about Dr. Pratt and how he is an actual emergency department physician who is breaking down scenes in some of these movies that are medical scenes. And people in the comments believe they know more simply because they just know more. Not, simply
because they heard a thing once upon a time.
Simply because their mama said, just like Forrest Gump mama said. So we have that, aspect of things. But I mean, I laugh. I laugh at that stuff. But what I would say is this, and might sound controversial, but we talk a lot about pretty privilege. We talk about what it means to be good looking and what it means when, you are in the world and you're just navigating and it's the seas are parting because you just look good. You beautiful. We were talking about sweetness and ATL and how, he had that charisma and everything. And because of his physical appearance, how, a lot was easier. And we talked about, for instance, Diamond in the Players Club, the same sort of thing, because she could get more clients coming over there to see her dance than her cousin Ebony could get. Right? Because they did not have the same level of pretty privilege. Now, there is also intellectual privilege, whether or not you realize it. So for all the people, if you're sitting back feeling like, oh, I really believe everybody's given something, and probably most people are average in most areas, right? But some people might just be extraordinary in one area or another, and if you are extraordinary beautiful, then great for you. And you better count that as an asset that you have, because you might not be, some extraordinary in another category. But people always look at it like grass is always greener.
Yeah.
And you always want what you don't have. If you're smart, you want to be prettier.
Right. And you get the people who's like, okay, I'm not smart or I'm not pretty, but then you start to talk down on those things that you don't have, right? Like,
fox in the grapes.
Pretty don't get you nowhere. Oh yeah, you might be smart, but you ain't got no money, and all the sorts of things. Oh, you got money, poor, but you ain't got this.
Yeah, and, But I mean, truth be told, probably everybody has something.
What's the fox in the grapes?
Well, it's where the fox is, it's too high and he keeps jumping and trying to get the grapes and he can't get the grapes. And then finally, after he can't get the grapes after many times of trying and he's frustrated, he's like, I didn't want them grapes anyway. And, so it's
okay.
Yeah, it's like, I can't have it, so I don't want it. And so
I think of Flex Alexander. I don't know why, but it was something about there's a hole, I don't know, an ant, something fall into the hole, right? And then a rat comes and try to get him out, and he in a Ferrari, and he can't get the Ferrari, and then an ant come, and then basically the ant whip out his, and then whoever's stuck in the hole climbs out, and he say, you don't need a Ferrari when you got a big. That's the joke.
So that's crazy.
That was probably on Def Comedy Jam back in the day.
Foolishness.
He ain't say it like that. That's me.
So do you? I don't know why that made me laugh. Do you want to talk about Jenny? Because I don't think we really have enough time to fully talk about Jenny, but we could maybe talk about Jenny's relationship with Forrest, or we can just talk about Jenny by herself. So let's just look and discuss. I want to talk about Jenny's relationship with Forrest first, and we'll weave in a little bit of Jenny because we don't really have all that much time left. I'm looking for my notes because I'm out of order now. I'm scrolling through.
Yeah, because the things are too long.
That Heit.
No.
That Heit has created, and I'm looking for my section. He says, you say this every life. You're using it wrong. Okay, in my wrong use of the app, I found my notes on that section. So we have Forrest and Jenny's relationship. Did Jenny really love Forrest, or was she just using him?
Did you press the thing so I could get to it?
Somebody.
See, look.
I'm sorry.
So you got to press a thing and then it highlights it so that the other person can see it, but I don't know where it is.
I'm sorry. I've pressed it. You should be able to see it. So, did Jenny really love Forrest, or was she just using him? Somebody in the chat brought this up earlier and said that they didn't like the movie and the ending because Jenny just basically used Forrest up. But Jenny does drift in and out of Forrest's life. She's only returning to him when she needs him, and she's at her lowest at the end. And it leads to many questions as to whether she truly loved him or she just needed stability. She needed somebody to raise her son that may or may not have been Forrest's son. This video, as I think about it, we should be talking about whether her feelings were genuine or if she was just manipulating Forrest's devotion, because she knew Forrest was devoted. I mean, and nobody is going around beating up people on your behalf and snatching them out of cars when you making out with them and all this if they were not, devoted to you. And then she also knew about Forrest's mental slowness, right? And so, a couple questions. Did Jenny wait until she was dying to marry Forrest?
Yeah.
Like, did she do all this and she was like, I might as well? Or did she want to marry him? Was that just to solidify stuff? Would she have married him if she wasn't dying?
So
did she know she was dying when she came back?
So the thing is, she had all her issues in her past and everything, right? And that oftentimes lead to possibly the things that she got into, right? And not being stable and all that. So see, Forrest, he got to go to college and stuff, went to the military. His life was more stable, right? She was in school and then she messed it up.
Because she posed in Playboy.
But, Grace because of her past, right?
Yes.
So then
LaToya Hickman says that she didn't know or understand love. She was used and, essayed by her father. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where it was. So she didn't have those same opportunities. So what do you do if the family was already poor on top of not being stable, right? And being, quote, toxic, right? So what can she do? She did whatever she could do, but to live her life, right? And then sometimes you have the guilt of, am I not good enough for this person too, right? Because you see Forrest, he's a good person.
Yeah.
I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
I will ruin him and his life, possibly too. It could be there. I don't know if it was, but that's a possibility.
J Bug in 88 says, I think she loved him, but she knew she wasn't good for him. That's literally just about what you just said.
Yeah. So that could be the thing.
This title is blasphemy. Y'all don't come from my favorite movie or my light-skinned Uncle Tommy. Hi, that's Deb who says that. Talking about the title of this live is Forrest Gump lied about everything. And you, Deb, is just joining. But Deb, you're going to have to rewind so you can hear the beginning where we really explain and talk about how he had lied about it all. Or you can, because we're going to be wrapping it up probably in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Or you can go back to the beginning and listen, or you can wait until we end and then you can go back and listen. But just save the links, y'all, if y'all are going to try to come back later, because sometimes it takes YouTube a minute to, do what it's got to do to get it back up and running. So, but anyway, so we are on the subject of Forrest and Jenny's relationship. So Jenny was bouncing back and forth, but her relationship with Forrest was like complex because of Jenny's background, which she needed some grace for because, of all that was going on in her childhood. She didn't even want to go home.
So a lot of times we don't know people's background, and if we do, we still don't give them grace. So in movie land, we tend to, but yeah, so Jenny had her stuff going on.
And I think she was desperate. Also, Jenny is she's got an issue with substances, what I'm saying. And so Jenny has a lot of issues, and we've talked about this in the past because we talked about it with Fresh's father in the movie Fresh. When you have those kinds of issues, which technically are medical issues, then we have to give the grace that is needed like you would for any other medical issue. And so Jenny was contending with a lot. And I think by the time she came back to Forrest that last time, when she basically came home to die, she was desperate. And because now you have this baby. And she had taken care of the kid up to that point, but now you have this baby. Now, while we're on the subject of it, what you think Jenny had?
I don't know.
They said she had a virus.
What year was it?
It was probably in the 80s. So, it may have been what everybody's probably thinking.
They don't ever just want to come out and say the stuff in these movies like this.
I think because it was 94, that was still very much at a time where that was prevalent. But another thing it could have been hepatitis.
Hepatitis, okay.
Yeah, she could have had like a hepatitis, and
So Dead Presidents was like 95 too, and they had that too.
Deb
and then some people was like,
some
people was like, it's Agent Orange because that was going around, but we have ambiguity in these movies, right?
Yeah,
where he was on a substance and he had the stuff with the women. So
and maybe it doesn't matter, right? Maybe the actual thing it doesn't matter. What matters is the lifestyle was connected to the illness, right? Because that would be the case whether it was maybe hepatitis or of course we know people who had blood transfusions and things like that.
But it could be something that had nothing to do with her actions, and it's about how we judge people, right? It could have been somebody that got sick and died, and a buttocks was on my screen. So
yeah.
Somebody that got sick and died, and our first thing is to be like, how did they bring this upon themselves?
Right. Hey, Reds. Red says it's what bug that everybody is probably thinking of primarily given the time, and that she was probably doing some substances and probably using things you poke yourself with, and having all types of relations maybe, and all of the things that back in the day they used to call high risk. Now I don't know what the current terminology is or whatever, but I know back in the day they would say it is high risk to be doing certain types of things and having activities, but just like you pointed out, it may have had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
It literally may have had nothing to do with that. We just don't know, Yeah, Deb says Skip had the bug in Dead Presidents too, in my opinion. Oh. Yeah. So you really don't know exactly, what it could have been. But the most heartbreaking scene in Forrest is undoubtedly, when Jenny is left and Forrest is standing up over that grave talking to her, and just how sad he is, because his life was her life had been filled with like this turbulence and trauma and separation. And then they finally reconnect, but it's only short lived. And, they got this peaceful, loving moment with their son, but then that's it, and Jenny is sick. And so she's laid up in the bed. And it's weird because in those scenes, it's beautiful outside, but she's just laid up in the bed because that's all she can do. She don't have the energy to be up and about and enjoying what was probably a dream in the end, right? Aside from her being a singer. So let's see. What else do we have to talk about with Jenny? I mean, I guess with Jenny, the question that just lingers is, was it usury? But then if you've listened to us long enough, that a long time ago, I always talk about how Heit told me it's all usury.
Yeah.
That, these relationships are all based on some of that, but it's like reciprocated usury.
Not mention it again, but Roy Wood Jr. talked about how his grandmother has certain friends for certain things. And that's basically what I'm saying.
The same thing.
Yeah. Like, you use the people in your life for the things that you use them for. That's just how it goes.
Neek Night Globe says this title is funny. Yeah, I mean, because this, we believe it's true. Wait till you hear the beginning of this. And like we said to everybody, save the link so you'll be able to see it after, with the replay, because it may take some time for YouTube to finish processing after we close out the live, sometime within the next 10 minutes, probably. So we were talking about, Forrest and, how he reacted to Jenny and her being gone toward the end of the movie, and just their relationship in general. It's like he never gave up on her, though. And I feel like in a lot of ways that Jenny she loved Forrest maybe like as a friend, but she really didn't want him. But I want to get into something a little bit more questionable and ask the question. All right, so there's this incident that happens when they're both in college where Forrest has beat up Jenny's boyfriend or whoever she's in the car with, and Jenny's like, you can't be doing that. Well, come on in because it's raining outside. And then Jenny up in the dorm room with Jenny's roommate in the room, Forrest come in and they get to talking, and Jenny's all like, well, you ever been with a girl, Forrest? And then, you know, Forrest can't handle the pressure. And he has, I guess, his first experience.
I don't think that's what
I think he did something on himself.
I don't
know. Go to the comments. Did he? Because he was just like, let me go to the bathroom. That's what he said.
Okay.
Okay, well, tell me, Heit. Explain
I don't
it.
know.
I'm sorry.
What do you mean to explain it? I don't know what happened. Maybe he just got I feel a little poke coming through, and that's it. Maybe.
Yes.
I don't know.
So, but whatever she was doing in that moment, and then later in the film when they actually do hook up and do it, back to the question we asked earlier, you know, how much of that is like being okay with Forrest? Can Forrest say yes to that? And is there some manipulation that's going on? Is it kind of unfair? Even if Forrest can say yes, is that interaction unfair, or is it a favor?
Tell them you love me. We kind of talked about this issue, right? But I think that's what Forrest wanted. I think he had some capacity to make his own decisions, right? So, yeah, but so the thing with what happened at first at school where he goes to the car, she was hiding the pants, right? So she just had to because the dude ran off. So then she like, all right, now all I got is Forrest, right? So it was just time after time where this happened like this between them two. But I think that he can, because I don't know, there's a difference between law and moral too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the law will say that he's on his own and he's capable. Morally, I don't know.
Did that just make him more obsessed with her?
I think it's different when it's a man and a woman. If the roles were reversed, then we'd be having a different conversation. Because it seems
the double standard.
The double standard makes it seem like women don't need it, but men do, right? Because it's so uncontrollable. Hence that men needing it.
Yeah.
But with women, is no, they just got so much self control. You don't need to do that. So it's looked at different if Forrest was a woman.
Latoya Hickman says in the chat, the silence on what the illness was got on my nerves, just like the color purple, and referring to that nasty woman disease, talking about
that was probably something different.
The nasty woman disease in the color purple was probably the one that begins with SYPH, that they were using. Let's see.
What was the one on Grey's Anatomy? I think that one, I thought it was incurable, but I don't know.
I don't remember.
And I was like, wait, they done spread
the
this
one
the whole
that all the
series?
interns had got from one another.
Everybody do everything
somebody in the
on
chat
that
is
show.
gonna know. Somebody in the comments will know. But Red says, that's true. We don't know. That's what I want from movies. And sometimes it's to give us more to dissect with the plot, the characters, etc. And I think that is what they're giving you, right? Because if they spell every little thing out, then there's less room for speculation. There's less room for interpretation.
We need less room, because I don't want people like where they're talking about with Skip.
Yeah.
People come to us and be like, it was definitely Agent Orange because at the time, and the character said it wasn't this. Like,
and I think
don't care what the character
we
says.
just asked the question, and the question is fine, but there were so many people on that video that did insist that was exactly what it was.
And when I'm talking about these movies, if a character says something, that doesn't make it fact, right? Because especially if it's something that the character can't know, like the dude said it wasn't, he say, nah, the H ain't never had me like that, right? That's not a basis for fact.
Yeah.
So,
and then sometimes they're saying things for other reasons other than to be truthful.
Like people do in regular life.
In the moment. So, but back to, as we are winding down, back to Jenny and Forrest, like, what do you think? I just think that she never would have chosen Forrest. He was a friend to her, and, at times an outlet that she, but
yeah, they were friends, but
Deb, we had that conversation talking about whether Lil Forrest was really Forrest's baby. We had talked about that a little while ago, so you're going to hear it because, we all got questions about that for sure. But yeah, but I don't look at it and feel it was inappropriate, though, the relationship that Jenny and Forrest had. I think that they known each other their whole lives. They loved each other. She helped him. Well, she just, she helped him do what he had to do. And it was maybe nurturing for her in some way too, so I really don't know, but y'all go to the comments and tell us what you think. We still had other stuff that we really didn't talk about. Namely, one person we didn't talk about is Lieutenant Dan, because he had a really cool character arc in this film. And maybe what we'll do is sandwich him in with one of these compilation live videos where we talk about different people from different movies and stuff like that. But as we are coming to the close of this, I just want to re-encourage everybody to please, if you have not already, go ahead and subscribe to all the channels that are linked in the description, because we have 4 channels for you all to be enjoying content across. And
4?
Yes, we have Heit the Great, Axiom Amnesia, Axiom Amnesia 2.0, and Heit Cheri of Axiom Amnesia. So 3 of them are about movies, and then one is Heit the Great, which is Heit's channel where he talks. Heit, tell him what you talk about.
I just talk about music, y'all.
Yeah, music.
In depth.
And
music, lyrics, theory, all that.
So, but all of these things really help to support the channel. Feel free, but go ahead, do support and join our free Patreon tier. That is also linked in the description. And just so you guys know, every little bit counts. If you're helping by watching the videos, watching the ads, we just appreciate all of that. Also, as far as ways that you can donate via Cash App, just single donations. Same thing with the thanks and the super chats. You all can do all of that. And in addition, if you want something that's more continuous, then, feel free to get a premium subscription, preferably on Patreon, because that gives us a little more flexibility. But also, you can do it as a YouTube channel member as well. And so that's 2 ways that you can help to support the channel. And then when you do support in those ways, you will get your name on our videos, just like you see at the beginning, where it's like, these are all of the people who helped to make this video possible.
Right.
You will be one of them. So we appreciate
everything. We are on Twitch. We're on Kick. Follow us on Kick or whatever it's called. Subscribe. Can you? No, I don't think you can subscribe yet. We need our following to get up on Twitch and Kick.
Yeah, so if y'all are over there, make sure you follow. And then finally, I would just say that we are going to have a couple more live videos this week on, let's see, today is Monday. On Wednesday, we're going to have a live video on the Heit Cheri channel, some point in the afternoon, maybe early evening. It's just going to depend. Same thing on Thursday with the Axiom Amnesia channel. And so we know, because you all have been asking for the movies that we are covering. So we know you will enjoy those movies as well. So we look forward. Feel free also to comment on this video with any of the movies you want us to cover that are in this vein, stuff like Forrest Gump and Shawshank Redemption and The Truman Show and other movies that, you think are great and you want to see.
If you made it this far, type "run for us" in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end.
And don't forget to join our free Patreons here and check out the video that's on the screen right now.